Well, welcome to another podcast for Pulsatile International. It's called the Pulsatile Podcast. I have a very special guest with me today, a young man, now not so young, but he was very young back then, but he was crucial in pointing the way for the development of the current trajectory of the way Pulsatile International and my thinking and the research that I've done is going and will continue to go as far as I can tell. Anyway, a great fellow. And a couple of things I want to scratch off the list here. I've gotten some comments from various people, the very few handful of people that have seen the podcast. First of all, I want to confess that the opening song is me, composed by me, performed by me, and recorded on my phone and then just uploaded. So that opening theme song, I did it, and it's the best I can do. And some people like it, and no one said anything really negative about it. But it's also kind of a an example of how roughshod this podcast is. Like I've had a couple of suggestions from people who have deep pockets, like, oh, you need to have different camera angles, and you need to have an internet guy that can look stuff up and bring it up for you. We don't have that kind of money. So it's unfortunate that we're at this stage, but as Donald Rumsfeld, I've quoted him before, Donald Rumsfeld, you go to war with the army that you had. And that's what I've got right now. So the other thing I want to talk about is that, and I've spared the public thus far, is that the way that I've traditionally functioned is with bad humor. I used to be a college professor, and as you know, watching a comedian fail is sometimes funnier than, I mean, you have to be really good to get people doing straight up humor. But if you fail, and humor is not your real intention, but just sort of a crutch you're leaning on, that's kind of the way you go. So I did that historically as an instructor, and our guest today was subject to that, so he can attest to uh, that little idiosyncrasy of mine. So I want to begin, speaking of bad jokes, with a slideshow. All right, let's see, from the beginning. There we go. And this is a podcast that I recommend to everyone. And it's a podcast that Joe Rogan podcast with a guy named Harlan Williams, who's a comedian I'd never heard of, but he's from Canada. And I've never seen a guy take Rogan to task as much as he did. It's interesting to watch him parry and debate and mess with Rogan. And one of the best parts in it was where he got Rogan to take his shirt off. He baited him into doing it, which is worth the price of admission right there. But in the very beginning, he made a comment to Rogan. He asked how Rogan was doing, and Rogan said, "Oh, I'm worried about nuclear war because of the Iran war." And it occurred to me that that is probably on everyone's mind, that even people that would take the time to listen to something like this, they're sitting there thinking like, "Oh, are we going to get nuked?" And just like Joe. And then this guy Harlan Williams reminds Joe, he goes, "So you're an American, aren't you?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm an American." And he goes, "Well, you shouldn't be worried if you're an American because you have this fleet of nuclear submarines that are floating around under the ocean with well over 1,000 people, 24/7, constantly going. And if North Korea or Iran or any of these other podunk nuclear countries fire one missile to the U.S., you can just be comforted by the fact that those nuclear submarines are going to fire 20 atomic warheads at whoever it was that fired the missile and completely obliterate them and knock out the threat. So you shouldn't be worried about that. You've got it taken care of." And, and then the guy hilariously starts imitating a submarine under the ground. And so when Rogan started trying to debate him, like, "Well, I'm really worried about, nuclear war and that sort of thing," he goes like, "Joe, just remember this." And he puts his fingers up on the top of his head and he goes, "Boop, boop, 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 boop," imitating sonar. And that may seem completely ridiculous for me to make a reference to that, but in fact, that is exactly what pulsatility is and what human beings are. We are constantly putting out signals on a variety of frequencies, not just in the brain, but the whole pulsatile machinery of your cardiovascular system and everything that's attached to that, your immune system, all of that is pulsating 24/7, putting out signals. And part of what, the essence really of what this is all about is figuring that out and then using it to get control of your health, to lead a healthier life. Now, the last thing I want to say about this to introduce our guest is if you'll notice on Mr. Harlan's head right here, there's the word Billy. Rogan says, you know, "Why do you have that name Billy tattooed to your head?" And he goes, "Oh, Billy, oh, Billy." Starts acting like he's, falling into depression. And then Rogan goes, "What is it?" And he goes, "Little Billy found his way to an open gate and made it out into the street and got run over by a car." So at first it seemed like he was talking about a human. And Rogan was like, "Oh my God." He goes, "Oh, Billy, oh, Billy." And he goes, "It must be horrible to have a child die that way." And he goes, "He wasn't a child. He was like my child." And he goes, "What was it?" And he goes, "Was it a dog?" And then he gets him. I don't think you ever find out what the animal is, but he goes on and on about Billy. And without further ado, what I have to say here is, "Oh, Billy, please appear. Please turn on your video."
Here I am.
"Oh, Billy, I don't see you, Billy. Where are you?"
I can see you. Yeah, yeah, my video is on. I can see you. I
Let's
am.
see here. I am not seeing you. Hold on.
Yeah, you might have to check the
Yeah, this thing's in the way here. There we go.
stuff that.
All right, let's see. There you are. All right.
Yep, here I am.
Come back. We'll come back to that slideshow. This is Billy Ravenell, William Ravenell, I should say. And
Hey,
let's
really fun.
see. I'm gonna try to put our. All right, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So say hello to the people, Billy.
A pleasure to be with you this bright and sunny Saturday afternoon in Philadelphia. LeBron,
Philadelphia.
that's right. LeBron James Day is today.
Is it?
That's right. LeBron James signed on with the Sixers, so the city will at least be in somewhat of a good mood.
How
Uh,
old is he? How old is he now?
oh, 41?
Uh-oh.
Is he
Uh-oh.
is he a student of yours? How else can he play basketball this long with that level of skill?
Well, tell him not to worry about nuclear war because boop, 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 boop. They're under the water
That's right.
24/7. running silent and deep. So I'm sorry I
God.
keep having these little interruptions from this annoying signal channel that I have up. I can't get rid of it right now because we're in the middle. Actually, let me stop recording and come back. Um, all right, we're back. So LeBron probably could do with a little bit of Qigong, don't you
Oh,
think?
I bet. Oh,
I
they all
wonder,
could.
I wonder if he
They-
knows it. I think a lot of these
I,
guys have been trained in something or other. But
yeah, I,
I don't think they are doing the stuff that you and I are going to
they
talk about.
they would. I mean, LeBron spends over $1 million on his body every year. If Kobe, same way, those guys, if they knew about it, I guarantee you they would.
But they don't know. So we're getting
No,
the
they don't.
message
No,
out.
exactly. That's
We're
right. That's
we're
right.
getting it out.
That's right.
Okay.
There we are. Yeah, hopefully LeBron will see this podcast and you know,
Pass it to him. Pass it to him. Okay. LeBron, if you're out there, we can
right.
help. We can help you.
We can get you to 45, 46 with the Sixers. Another
Yep.
contract.
All right. Now, let's see if I can get you up here. Here we go. Go meeting. No, that's not what I want. All right. We want this. Show video panel. There we go. There's you. And again, I'm cut out of this. I don't know why my video's on. All right. But I want to have you in this for sure. So let's go to,
Yeah, I can't see you, by the way.
I can't see me. That's all right. There's old Billy. Old Billy. All right. So let's go to your history. And I'm going to read it for you. Okay. And then you can cut in, if you want to say something.
Sure.
But you are a lawyer. And you currently have you're the founder and managing attorney of your own law named after you, and your focus is primarily on estate planning and elder care, which is interesting in and of itself. You have a very interesting educational background we'll get to, but this podcast, you can pause it here, folks, if you want to take a look at Billy's background. You can do that. But I'm going to jump through it really quick here and note that he was at one point lived in Japan and was an English instructor. After he graduated from a series of universities, he went to Japan after he went to the University of Virginia here at the bottom of his education. That was where
Okay.
I met him. And then he went to Japan. Then he came back and went to Cornell and then finally went to law school in Temple at Temple University. And at Cornell, he got a master's in Asian studies, commendable. Uh, and he's Billy and I have been in touch off and on throughout the years. But it all started around 1991 or two, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, around 1991.
All right,
That's when I
right.
met you.
So I
And
came, I came to Charlottesville in 1990, and I joined up with your former karate teacher, whom we talked
that's
about in
right.
a previous podcast. I didn't last long with him because he was intimidated, in my opinion, by what I was doing, and he didn't understand it. He had really bad health problems that he was
Yeah, he did.
masking. He was masking it with powerful medications. And I
Yeah, oh,
think
I
a
didn't
lot
know
of
it.
people in his school were doing that. They were doing steroids for
Okay.
sure.
I did not know that.
Yep. And as you know, use of steroids will result in a breakdown of your body, and particularly your musculoskeletal. And plus, he was a hard ass.
Yeah.
He really was. He was very good. His fifth degree black belt
Yeah.
in Korea, had a massive sidekick.
He
I
was
mean,
the I believe he was the instructor of the 1988 US Olympic team for Taekwondo in Seoul.
no kidding.
Yeah.
So
He was way up
he
there.
had, well, in my opinion, his sidekick was every bit as
It,
powerful as Rogan's.
no, I felt it.
He could launch
he,
it.
he crushed me in the ribs quite a few times with
I
that thing.
bet. Well, I bet. I just saw him launch it, from a standing position, and it fired
Yeah,
impressively. Um, but we talked about before, he ended up sadly taking his own life, and I don't really want to get into that. But what I want to talk to you about is that period when you trained under him. When did you start, and what good things did you carry away from it? And then I can gloss some of that as
sure,
well.
sure, and absolutely. So I started at age 13, and it was with everyone my age. I think it was Karate Kid Part One, Karate Kid Part Two. Once I
Yeah.
saw those movies, and once I saw this, I was hooked. I wanted to do martial arts, and my mom, she was a law professor at the University of Virginia uh, for more than 20 years. She signed me up with Three Emperors Studio, and so it was actually me and a bunch of other professor brats in there. Age 13, I literally knew nothing about. I didn't know how to fight. I was a kid from the
Wait, wait,
suburbs.
wait. Let me correct you. Not Three Emperors, Inner
Oh, I'm
Stairway.
sorry, Inner Stairway. That's right. It was
Yeah.
the Inner Stairway. That's right.
Or as we
Um,
as we who were against him at that time called it Inner Steroid. Aha.
I didn't.
Sorry. Sorry
I
about
didn't
that.
know that. That's good. That's
All
good.
right, go
I didn't
ahead.
know that. My poor 13-year-old innocent, brain.
You were spared that. They
I
kept
was,
that from you.
but
Okay.
it was a real cast of characters in there. I went in there, John. I even like I think I was like holding my fist with like my thumbs. Like I had no idea how to fight at all. And my first instructor was Lloyd the Chainsaw Hill or something like that. And
The
this little guy,
chainsaw.
I think that was his nickname, something like that. And so this dude he was lanky. He was supposed to be like 5% body fat. He taught me how to fight. He was extraordinary. I mean, you're talking about the point of view from a 13-year-old who doesn't know how to fight. But from what I've
Yep.
heard, he was pretty
Yep.
good. And this other little guy named Tam, who couldn't have been more than 5 feet. This guy could crawl on the walls like Spider-Man.
Wow.
Um, when Ennis wasn't around, those two were kind of my first, like the instructors that sort of were taking over the classes. Um, it was discipline. It was great. Ennis he encouraged us to study and to work hard. He taught us proper techniques. He was hard on us. I mean, it wasn't crazy. Like, we weren't punching each other in the head or anything like that. But as far as a first kind of experience with martial arts, I thought it was a good one. But
Well, he was also really bright and articulate.
he was.
I
No,
think
he
he
was.
had a he had a I don't know whether he had a I know he had a master's degree from
Yeah,
UVA.
that's right. Yeah. And
He may have had a PhD. I'm not really sure, but that impressed me most about him was that he was super articulate.
yeah, he was articulate. He was smart. He was charismatic.
Yep.
The parents loved him.
Yep.
Um, he,
Well, he went to charm school. Did you know that?
no, I did not.
He actually went to charm school.
What is that? I've heard of it, but
I
I
don't
didn't
know.
think it was a
I mean,
real thing.
you're talking to the wrong guy in terms of that, but he shared this with me when I went into business with him. So on the one hand, he goes, "Yeah, I went to charm school because his mother was the vice president of Procter and Gamble, so he was
Oh, wow.
an elite
Okay. That
guy."
makes sense.
And but then, at the time, I had kind of a cloud over me because I had a woman with me and you remember, do you remember OSHA? Do you remember her?
Yes. Yeah, I do remember
Okay.
her.
Well, OSHA was a student of mine. This was down in Blacksburg, and she had become involved in a really sinister new age, I would kind of subculture. And there was a guy that beat her. Like she had
Oh,
two small
gosh.
children too. He beat her like black and blue. So I came to her aid, long story short, and beat him up. And I went to jail for that.
Oh, wow.
So, assault. I went assault and battery.
Wow.
And I thought I was going to get off, because I was like, hey, I defended this woman, and the judge just goes, "You took the law into your own hands, buddy."
Mm,
No,
mm.
sir. So anyway, I knew that, I had this charge against me, and so I had to tell Ennis that, and he goes, "Well, that's nothing, John." He goes, "One time I got into a fight with three guys, and I took them all out. I forget, where did he grow up? Do you know? Was it New York?
Yeah.
I think
I
it was
thought
in
it
New
was Canada.
York.
I think it was Canada.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
it was an inner city altercation, and he said he took all three of them out, and two of them fled, and the one that would lay on the ground, he put his mouth on the curb and
Oh wow.
did a
Curved
curb
him?
kit. He
Damn.
curbed him.
Straight out of American X, whatever that movie.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeesh.
mean, so this was what, 1990.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
there was no movie inspiration for this. I mean, I don't recall curb kissing being, but
No, no, no,
he had
no.
a name for it. He called it curb kissing, and I was like, my
Damn.
skin crawled, as
Yeah,
I
yeah, for
told you.
real. That's
So that was, your instructor was on the one hand this really impressive character in
right.
terms of his outward appearance, his self-control, his spokesmanship, his technique was great. But then, on
Yeah,
that other side of the, like just behind the wall
right.
was a guy ready to let it all out.
Yes. No, you could
So
feel
that
that.
was, and
You
it,
could
so
feel that.
you learned well. So I'll say that much for you. So you came away from there. I would say the best thing you learned from him was how to fight.
I learned how to spar. I realized during the time that I was studying with him that and observing some of the black belts who had gotten in real street fights,
Yeah.
that although I could do sport taekwondo very well, I did not know how to fight. That's what and thank God I learned that at an early age. Around age 17, I was like, I saw some black belts get cut up on the street, and I was like, I do not know how to fight. And I think I fought some guy in there that eventually like grabbed me and threw me on the ground. And I was like, what the hell is this? And he's like, wow, you don't know like, 10th grade varsity wrestling. And I was like, no, I
Yeah.
don't. And that's
Yeah.
when actually one of the reasons I wanted to switch was I met this guy who I went to UVA with who was into he introduced me to this book, The Tao of Health, Sex, and Longevity by Daniel P. Reed. And I read that book and I eventually became a vegetarian. I was interested in meditation, um, and I was looking for, guidance into this whole new way of health, essentially. And that was sort of the time I'd kind of like I was moving away from karate, taekwondo, and I met you. And
Yep.
we had some conversations, and I told you a little bit of what I knew about the meditation, and you basically said, "All right, kid, you don't know what you're doing, but I do." Something to that effect. And I started training under you, at that point.
Well, that was one of my and Jim, your former instructor, put one of the things that broke us up, and there were several things, was that I would, and again, I was, preaching what I had learned, because I had been just like you, been in a really fight club, like
Right.
very serious, and there, we went to the ground and all kinds of stuff. So these guys were kind of killer people that I used to. In fact, I began to meet people who you could tell would, either they had committed murder
Okay.
in combat or murder level violence, and
Right.
you could feel it on them. You could just
Right.
feel it. And I
Yeah.
started to get creeped out when I got to China. They condemned that. They just went, "You don't need that. That's bad for your health. You
Right.
do the forums. The forums have this sort of proactive health, proactive effect. That's really what you need to focus on." So once I learned the real deal, I was like, yeah, I converted. So when I came back, I would say, I would tell audiences, I would say, the way Americans have learned martial arts is wrong. And it's actually harmful for you to learn the way we've been trained. You need to learn how to take care of your body, and then you learn how to fight slowly and carefully instead of like being thrown into, some sort of like WWE
Right. Yeah. Sure.
mosh pit, to have to fight people. Now I don't know this, I mean, the reality is if you want to fight and you have to fight, you're going to have to do the kind of things that that wrestler guy taught you. You're going to have to know that if you want to
Yeah,
play in that sandbox. But anyway, Jim came up to me and he goes, "John, quit saying that martial arts hurts people. You know, you're hurting my business." And I kind of went, "Okay, I won't do it." But at the same time, I was like, "Ha ha,
right.
too bad." And it really did end badly for him. And I've
Yeah,
known he is
yeah,
not the only one. I have met so many martial artists, and usually they have like a 5 year arc where they start out and things are great. And when they hit the fifth year, things start to go wacky for them. And it's rare that you can find a martial arts studio that will go beyond 7 years, 8 years.
I
Um,
want to, what? There's one quick point I want to make. I have a client named Mr. Pike. He's 80 years old, and he actually ran about 7 or 8 Taekwondo studios in Pennsylvania. And now his nephews are running them. And essentially what he told me was that the money is with the kids. Like if you're good at training from first grade to, pre-high
yeah,
school, that's where you can make the money. If you start effing around with, adults that want to learn how to fight, it
yeah.
can get dark really
Yes,
quick.
it turns dark fast. Good. Well, he backed up my experience. So I was really happy to have, still do martial arts. And the Chinese persuaded me. They went, try to do this form, where it's called Jiazu Chuan, comprehensive fist. And it was the hardest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I'd never, and I'd had full
Yeah,
contact
that was hard.
fights that lasted half an hour.
Wow.
Um, now it wasn't, I mean, you get to rest in between when you have a full contact fight. You're backing up and,
Right.
moving around and dodging and stuff. But Jiazi Chuan is like a 220, a 220-yard sprint where
Yeah.
you are going full out for 2 minutes as hard as you can, doing things that are the most challenging things I ever felt. In fact, I would attribute much of my injury, series of injuries, to that form. It really just wore me down. So on the other side of that, and I was very proud of that too. I was like, just as, a kickboxer is proud of their skills or a grappler is proud of I ended up doing to the Chinese system, what I would have done to karate anyway. So, and it's all about just not having the ethical maturity to know your own limits and to not having that bigger spiritual picture, which I think you had. I'm sure it slipped out of your hands from time to time, but you had it very early on, and I willingly let go of it because I thought I was, you know, if you're an academic, certainly back in my day, it was a mark of shame to profess any kind of particularly Christian uh,
Sure.
perspective. So even though I did have it, I held on to it. Internally, I wouldn't talk about it, and I was hypocritical. I would be openly dismissive, especially anyone that was, unsophisticated Christians. Were
Right.
a point of contempt for intellectuals back then. But and that was a mistake. It was a big mistake, and it's one that I've had to come back to. All right, so now let's just move on. We've got oh no, no, let's talk about no, let's stick with me. Okay. So this is you back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
And this is a picture. I just reran the picture from John Dockin, who appeared the past two podcasts. That's Dockin on the right, and right in the middle there, the young fellow with the long hair with the blue circle drawn around him
That's
is
right.
Billy, back when he had long dreads,
I
and
did.
shoulder length at least, right?
They went down to my waist by the time I cut those off. I had them for 8 years.
So
Uh,
explain why you would have such hair, because I think
oh,
that,
you know,
gets,
I was very much into music,
mm,
and at the time period I was playing. At that time I was playing pretty heavy. this hardcore music, and I was, something akin to, it was even heavier to what was going on in Seattle in the early 90s. And it was this hardcore music. So I started growing out my hair and, collecting, various amps to elevate my sound, and connected with a couple guys in Charlottesville. And that was the whole thing behind the hair. I was just sort of in the music scene. But one thing I noticed is that a lot of these guys in the music scene, they were doing a lot of drugs, like heavy drugs,
Yeah.
like cocaine. But I always thought, like, I was a big fan of Hendrix and some of these other artists, but I recognize the need to sort of to enter into this kind of altered state in order to
Mm,
perform this type of music, but I didn't want to do it with drugs
mm,
at all. And so
hmm.
for me, like a part of the training, like, of course I was pursuing, the epitome of health was like something that I wanted to achieve. But in addition to that, the meditation, the fasting, um,
You were
all those
con
practice.
so you were conflicted then.
Well, I want those. I felt that those activities were what I wanted to use to get me to that focused state of mind on stage. So rather than like having to use
I
drugs,
see.
yeah, for me it was meditation, fasting, um, prayer to some respect, in some respects, and of course like a lot of practice to get to the point where I could, perform the music with like an unsullied state of mind.
And your style, you were like a guitarist, so you were playing like shredder type
So you know what, the
power
style.
chords. What?
Yeah, it was like I couldn't shred that well. I wasn't like a great lead player. I like later on, I sort of got into playing a lot of lead guitar, but at the time it was more like we would drop the low E string to D to kind of
Mm.
make it easier, and we would sort of, and that allowed us to kind of play like a plethora of these really dissonant, chords, and a lot of it was rhythmic. And kids loved it. And so what I realized is, like, around age 20, 21, I think I went out one day for a show, and there was like 119-year-old, like between 14 and 19-year-old boys, like, killing themselves in the pit. And that was the day that I was like, I think this is kind of the end of my hardcore career. This is really what I got into this for. I really, that's, I'll tell you something else funny is, like, there was a shop called the Cosmic Coyote Gift Shop on the
Uh,
corner. It
yeah.
was like it was a
Oh
head
yeah, yeah,
shop.
yeah, yeah.
You
The
remember that?
Cosmic Code. She was one of my
That's right.
students.
Was she Linda?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah. So
Heller. Her
yeah,
last name
that's
was
right. That's right.
Heller.
Heller. Do you know that her son Amos Heller? Do you know
Yeah.
who he's the bass player for?
Dave,
No,
right?
no, no, no. That's Stefan.
Oh,
No,
that's
her
Stefan.
no, her son Amos is the dude. What is her name? She just said that
Heller was her last name.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
her
No, no, no.
name.
The name of the woman. She's a famous rock star. She just had the wedding in Madison Square Garden in New York. Um,
Uh,
she married Travis Kelce.
oh, Taylor Swift.
Yes, he's the bass player of Taylor Swift now.
Oh my God. Well, he was
Yes,
big. He was big in who was he playing with in Charlottesville when he was
like
playing?
he's
Because I
playing with
remember this.
he's playing with Nerve No Pain. Uh,
That's it. Nerve, no
Nerve
pain.
No Pain with like a
Yeah.
metal band, and of course I played a bunch of shows with them as well in my band.
Yes.
Uh, but I was in the Cosmic Coyote, and I've been playing all this really heavy music.
Yeah.
We opened up for like the Melvins, Helmet, a lot of these bands, and I remember just like I was listening to like WTJU, I think it was, or something like that,
Yeah.
and the Grateful Dead came on, and they're like, "All right, we're here for the Jerry Garcia hour," and I remember thinking like, I'm not gonna listen to this crap. And then I remember my hand was reaching up towards the to change the radio station, and suddenly I was just like, you know what? This is kind of nice. I kind of like this. I remember just sort of sinking into this Grateful Dead, and just like it slowly. And then I think I got a girlfriend, and I stopped playing hardcore, and people are like, Bill, what's wrong with you, man? Like, and I was like, I'm just not angry anymore. I think
Oh,
all these different things. I think like just growing older, the meditation, wanting to do some other more advanced music. But anyway, that is why I had the hairstyle, which
yes.
eventually I cut off before I went to Japan.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought. And I wanted to mention your music career because you were semi-famous and you were under the shadow of Dave Matthews Band. Dave
Yeah,
Matthews Band is where right when how old were you when he broke out? Like
I was
18,
I was 19. I was
19?
19, yeah, 19
Yep.
years old when yeah, I'll never forget that day. You remember the Dave Matthews, that first album, Remember Two Things,
Yes.
it came out the same day as In Utero by Nirvana.
Nirvana. Yeah.
That Tribe
Quite.
Called Quest album, and like everybody was like, this is the days where you couldn't download anything. So
Yeah.
we're lined up outside of Plan 9 at 2 in the morning to
Yep.
be let in to purchase these albums. And everybody was buying these three albums, just,
Yep. Yep.
Tribe Called Quest, Nirvana, and Dave Matthews, Remember Two Things. And
Yep.
so, yeah, he was quite popular.
Yeah. I was not a fan of him at the time. I was a skeptic. And
Yeah,
remember two things is actually one that I was made me skeptical because it was a different sound.
totally different.
Um,
Yeah, totally different.
he's a good songwriter and I respect him for that. And certainly his drummer is amazing.
Yeah.
But it was weird being around him because I had ambitions also to play, but I was a cover band guy. And
Okay, gotcha.
I remember being shocked that nobody wanted to hear covers.
Yeah, that's
I was
interesting.
just
Yeah, you're
like,
right.
they go, cover band, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah.
And
Well,
I just had to hang my head and like, okay, I'm not worthy and had to drop out of it. But I did get to play with people who played with Dave, because
yeah,
the covers that I wanted to play were difficult.
yeah,
And
they were. I remember that.
so you remember I was a big Police fan,
Yeah,
back
that,
then. So
that's
that sort of starred the drummer and
yeah. I mean,
vocals and that sort
yeah.
of thing. And
Try and find a drummer and a bass player that can play the Police. It's not
yeah, but
easy.
I found them, and they were buddies with Dave, and some of them. Did you remember Warren Richardson? He
Yeah,
was okay. Warren
nice.
was an
Yeah.
amazing guy.
No, I saw him with TR3 all the time at Sigma Nu back in the day.
He big dude. He
Yeah, he
was
was huge.
big, and
Big.
Warren at first joined me, and it was all because of Kung Fu. It's
Oh,
like,
wow. Interesting.
so, the black community respects Kung Fu,
Oh yeah.
and it just instant and martial arts in general.
Right.
So, Warren like instantly went, okay, Kung Fu. I don't know anyone who knows this. And so he came over to my house and I played with him. And we played this Police song called So Lonely, which is a huge, super high vocals. And, I had a mic and I was singing those sting vocals at this very high level. Warren sang backup without a microphone and he drowned me out.
Wow. Wow.
So his nickname was Bullhorn.
I can see why. That's
So
I can
then,
see.
well, Warren Winning recruited this guy, Johnny Gilmore.
Oh, I know that name.
And
I know.
Johnny was like, he and Carter were like, Johnny was so good that he could play with anyone, so he didn't really care. And he ended up, you know, I just didn't have the chops to keep up with those guys. They were above my pay grade. They were playing, I mean, Warren was playing with Tim Reynolds,
That's
who
right.
is
That.
who is Dave's guitarist.
Yeah. No, yeah, he's
And
fantastic
Tim
guitar.
Reynolds is amazing
He
guitarist.
was
And
extraordinary.
so, and they did, they had a legacy that went way back into the 80s and, they did very complicated soul music. There was a band called Serious Business,
Oh
I
yeah, I know that.
think, where it was Jerry curls, so they had the Jerry curls and they all had like the same suits on and they choreographed, remember how
Oh
in
wow.
Prince,
Yeah.
remember Prince?
Yeah, yeah.
Who was
Prince.
the guy, in Purple Rain? The guy that appeared with Prince, he was sort of like the nemesis of Prince.
Oh,
Um,
is that Morris Day?
that's him, Morris
Okay,
Day.
Morris
And
Day,
Morris
yeah.
Day had a lot of cool choreography and stuff,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's
purple
awesome.
suits and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
they were doing that.
Yeah,
which
I
is
got you.
hard, man. That's
That's right,
hard.
man.
That's
It is.
showmanship. And they could do that. So the stuff that I was doing was like they could do in their sleep, even though it
Mm.
was really hard, for
Right.
me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, you were in a serious vein there in that you were playing for a crowd that was seeing stuff like that. And then I walked into it kind of foolishly. And it was a totally different environment,
Yeah.
based on what my experience was. So at any rate, I admired that about you, and I admired that you put yourself out there and you kept all these qualities and you used them, to get to the next level. You reached the point where you were like, I don't want to do this anymore. For me, it was bailing the drummer out of jail
Oh yeah.
at 12
There you
o'clock.
go.
The rock and roll world is
Yeah, yeah,
unhealthy.
yeah.
I'm
That's
sorry,
all.
it's just unhealthy.
Yeah.
And I just went, I can't, if I want to do this health stuff, I have to cut this loose. And so it was sort of like giving up your childhood. It was just
Yeah.
like,
No, I get
this
it.
is a sticky, wet blanket I'm just going to let go of and move on to the next level
Right.
of evolution. All right, so this is you. How much did you weigh then? Like 130 pounds? I mean, look at you. You're like
No,
six
no.
foot.
You know what? You know what? I weighed at that point. I weighed 159 pounds at that point. I think I was 8% body fat, and
I think you were
now
less than that. I think you were less than
no,
the
no,
8%.
no, because I was obsessed with getting my weight up. So I'd weigh myself every day, but I couldn't get past
Well,
159.
you were vegan, right? You're
I was
vegetarian.
vegetarian. Yeah, I was vegetarian. I
Yeah.
couldn't quite hack the vegan like
Are you
diet.
still a vegetarian?
I'm not. No. Once I moved to Japan, I started eating a lot of fish.
They schooled you out of that, right? They
I was,
wised you up.
yeah, I was told before I moved over there that, you ought to start like add some fish into your diet if you want to be
Yeah.
comfortable over there. And so I did. I eat some turkey and chicken now as well on
Well,
occasions.
the Japanese have the best diet, hands down. So this was 1997. Now, I was hurt when this picture was taken, and you and I were talking about this before we started recording. You got hurt roughly around the same time that I did. And was it from doing the same long fist form? Was
It
that,
was, man, I think it was a yeah, I think that it was oh, you know what it was? It was that, and I had really upped my abdominal work
yes, I remember you
as
saying you did
well.
these sit-ups
Yeah,
that
and
were
like
killing you.
yeah, and so I really just I became extremely vain about building this 12 pack, whatever the heck I was trying to do at the time. And I think that in combination with doing like these advanced longfish forms every day, like two
Yep,
three times,
yep, yep.
eventually I was like, wow, my oh, you know what? I think that I was lifting a lot of weight. Just all of that just caused immense strain on
So was
my
it the
iliac psoas. Yep,
psoas muscle?
the
Yeah.
iliac psoas. And so
So,
once I strained it, I had to stop lifting weights. I had to stop doing crazy sit-ups. I had to stop everything
yep. I
essentially.
remember that. I remember it. I think I may have been already been hurt. I got hurt late November 1996. That's when I
Okay.
got hurt. So this is, and mine was a break. I actually broke my back.
Mm.
And you remember Anders was
Yeah.
sort of the expert. I think he majored in kinesiology or exercise
Yeah.
physiology. So I asked him, I said, Anders, tell me what muscle group this long fist form works. And he said the psoas. He said it overworks it. It puts a
Yeah.
huge demand on it.
Right.
So that is right where my injury was, but it was spinal. But
Mm.
the effect was when the break happened was that the nerve that feeds the psoas was activated. So it went into massive cramp
Oof.
and it wouldn't stop. And it was
Oh,
because the
man.
bone was actually pinching the nerve. And I didn't, at that time, the imaging, you couldn't even get an MRI. I couldn't get my doctor to give me an MRI because they said you need to wait a month. And
Right.
if you don't get better,
They're
we'll
so
give you the
stingy.
MRI. But I
So
would wait a
stingy.
month and then I would do the practice and it would go away. I would heal it up.
No, I
And then
want to
they'd
talk
go,
about that.
nope, I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
giving the MRI. And so then I was
yes.
like, okay, fine, I don't want it. And then I would go back to teaching and doing long fist and then I'd get
Right.
hurt again. So it was like seesaw.
Yeah.
I would get
No.
well, and then I'd get hurt again, and eventually I became actually disabled and crippled. But so we were kind of peas in a pod there. You wisely stopped. I couldn't because I had a family to support then. I had
Oh
two
yeah, sure.
children. My marriage was breaking up. It was really stressful. That was a tough time
Yeah.
altogether. I don't want to belabor that too much, but one of the things that happened around this time, I think it might have been before I got hurt because I was really cocky. Um, is it you because you had a lot of friends? You actually tried to bring people into the studio. Hey,
Yeah.
look at come meet this guy. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
brought
Yeah.
there was some like really sweet new age girl that you brought in there, and she had trained with someone that I had absolute contempt for. It was a Tai Chi teacher.
Oh,
And
he.
it wasn't this all had to do with this billionaire, the wife of this billionaire that brought this guy down from Maryland to teach. And I met the guy and I knew that he didn't know what he was doing. I mean, he could do a form,
Right.
he had a form, he had the Chin Man Ching style, he could teach that, but he did not understand deep internal martial arts. So I proceeded to critique this guy. And then I can't remember what I said to her, but it was along the lines of you're wasting your time. If you really want to learn the real deal, you need to come here. And she was looking at me with these sort of Bambi eyes, kind of like I didn't notice at the time, but she act when it after I talked to you later on, I realized she was actually tearing up.
Oh
And
wow.
then, and then she left. She went, "Okay, thank you for your time." She left. She seemed fine. And then I saw you a couple of days later, and I said, "Billy, what happened to that girl you brought in here?" And you said she went home and like bawled her eyes out after talking to you.
She saw. Oh man.
I felt horrible. And I went, well, that certainly wasn't my intention,
That's
but
sad. That
that's
shouldn't
when
have happened.
I began to question like maybe you're not as great as you think you are. Maybe you need to pay attention to these effects. And then years later, I'd say maybe 10 years later, you and I had coffee.
Oh yeah.
And so
Right.
this was like
Yeah.
2015, maybe something like that. We had coffee. We just met for coffee, and you and I just were catching up. And at one point, you
No, no,
said
no.
to
I think
me,
it was. I think it was 2007. Because I think I was transitioning to Cornell, and I just come back from Japan.
okay, and we had
Yeah, but 10
coffee.
years later. Yeah, it was 10 years later though.
So you remember we had coffee, right?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
Okay, so it was really long, almost 20 years ago. But
that's crazy.
we sat down and I was bragging about, you know, my shit and put again, I started like criticizing. You brought up someone, it might have been my brother-in-law, whom I had at that time was sort of angry at.
Right.
And he was doing pickup, which by the way,
Oh yeah.
I hate to rub it in, but it failed. Okay.
Right. Well, he's
But
not. Yeah. Thank God he's not doing that.
but
Yeah.
anyway, you brought it up. You were like, no, no, he's legit. He's like really
Yeah,
doing.
that's
And
right. That's
I was
right.
like, bullshit. He's not. And then you stopped and you just, this is how far you had come. You really matured. You just looked at me and you went, John, I really respect you. I've learned a lot from you, but I just got to give you a little bit of advice, and you just shouldn't talk so negatively about other people. And again, boop, 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 thinking back to Harlan and his submarine metaphor, I remembered the time of that girl
Right.
and bringing her to tears just by my arrogance. And by the time 2007, I had endured multiple surgeries and had been humbled severely. And it stuck with me. I was like, bam, that was like a message from God right there. And it really stuck with me. And to be honest, I haven't, been as good as I should be about talking shit about other people. But, I do remember it and I am restrained considerably more than I used to be. So I just had to clear the deck on that one right there and give credit where credit is due. And that's one of the reasons why I've had you on the podcast. It's not the only reason. Now, I want to hear your story about you graduated from UVA and
Yep.
then you went to take it away.
So yeah, once I graduated from UVA, I actually went to Atlanta, Georgia, and that was during the I went there to make it as a musician. And I started playing with some of the old guys from Charlottesville and Atlanta, and that's when things got real. Like you move from somewhere like Charlottesville to Atlanta, where there's a
Yeah,
bunch of guys trying to eat.
yeah.
And that's when I realized this is not and so I was in this band. We played in Georgia and North Carolina. And I think I was in North Carolina in uh Ash Asheville, like near
Mm.
Halloween. We had to play 3 shows, and that was when I said, like my a friend of mine from Charlottesville came down for the show, and he was critiquing us a little bit, and he basically said to me, You've lost it, haven't you? You've lost your muse." And I was like, You're right. I'm not into it anymore." And that
It's
at that
not deep enough. I mean, honestly, it's not deep enough.
Yeah, and there was, there are always issues with band members as well. The band wasn't getting along, and I wasn't that excited about the music. Um, and so I started, so I was working in a advertising agency at the time period, and I had a friend of mine in Japan. So, and I got to get back to this. Before the advertising agency, I was working at a metaphysical bookstore. It was a vegetarian restaurant
The
slash.
Cosmic Coyote,
It was
Atlanta
called
style.
it was called the Wish Fulfilling Tree and the In the Shade Cafe.
The what?
The Wish Fulfilling Tree and In the Shade Cafe.
Good
And
Lord.
it was like this. It was all metaphysical books. Same as like it was like a giant Quest bookshop
Yeah, yeah.
with a vegan vegetarian restaurant in the back. And so I was a assistant manager at the restaurant. So I was like 23, 24 years old. And I worked the bookstore. So I'm back there and I've got like this long hair. And so I'll tell you something funny, man. I'm not proud of this. I was getting paid $8 an hour as the manager, but I'd give myself wait staffs. So we'd have a lot of gay dudes
Yeah.
come back there. And so what I would do, John, I'd take my dreads, I'd tie them up into these ponytails, and these guys would tip me like they double these tips. And I'm like, I'm not proud of this. I need this money. It was nuts. It was terrible. But but there was this one dude who used to always come in there named Andre, who I became friends with. And Andre, he was eclectic. He had these dreadlocks, he tied it in blues. He came in like looking like Prince, and he'd always invite me out to Rage Against the Machine show, all these various bands in Atlanta. And he'd come in with this girl named Erica and their kid named Seven. And I was like, so he was a vegan. And he'd always ask me to come to his studio. He's like, hey man, why don't you come to my studio, record some stuff? And I'm like, nah, Andre, I don't got time for that, man. I'm in this band and I've got this other work to do. And I kept turning him down. And one day I was looking at the newspaper and there was this article that said, outclassed by outcast. And
Ah,
and I was like, oh my God, Andre is Andre
that was him?
3000. It was him.
That was him?
It was him. He'd been coming
Holy
in. He
jeez. I didn't
he'd
know
been
that.
yeah, he'd been taking me out. He'd been like taking me out to all these shows. He always invited me to his studio. I always turned him down like he was some scrub. And it was
Oh my
freaking
God, man.
and then after he blew up beyond blowing up after that.
Yeah, yeah. They were
He went
huge.
he became infinitely famous. Needless to say, he never invited me back to the studio again after that. But so at the metaphysical bookstore, there was this psychic woman, and so we became friends. She never did anything psychic,
Yeah,
um, but we became friends, and so she had actually she had given me the unsolicited just unsolicited advice about my stomach. She basically told me that my stomach was healed at some point. Maybe that was one of this like because I was concerned about like ramping up my exercise at the time. So I was meeting with her once, and so this is something kind of funny. She said she worked with Christ energy. I wasn't really into the whole psychic thing.
yeah.
She did some sort of healing, um, and but she had mentioned once that like I told her we'd met and I told her a little bit about what I did. And she said she could see my Qigong practice in my aura. Now, I don't know what that means. I'm not psychic, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, that she had mentioned that. And
I've had similar experiences with new age psychic type people where they say they could see it, you
right, right,
know.
right. That's what she said. She could see it. Like it was almost it was very matter of factly the way she
Yeah.
had mentioned it. But I was deciding whether to go to Japan or China because I was done with music, sort of done with the job. I'm like, I'm either going to China or Japan. I'd visited China and I was thinking like going to China and and that's the only time she actually said during our relationship, she's like, okay, now I'm going to do something psychic. And she's sort of going like she looks like she's doing something like that. And she goes, oh, you got to go to Japan. You got to go to Japan. Like
Well,
China, she said something like China's going to eat you alive. It's disorganized. The people take advantage of you. Japan's very organized. Um, looks like, oh, and then she goes, and you're going to get married in Japan. And I was like, what? And
wow.
she's like, you will find your wife in Japan. And I didn't think about it. I was like, that's wild. I was thinking at the time period. I didn't think much about that. And then I got over there, and sure enough, I met a girl, etc. The rest was history, which leads me to how I ended up coming back to America. But one thing that was great about Japan, John, was that I became an English teacher. As an English teacher, you work from basically from like either 1:30 to 9:10 or from like 4:20 to 9:10, 5 days a week.
Mm,
So I would get up at 7:30 a.m. and I would have 6 hours before work. So there was a time period where I was meditating for 3 straight hours,
mm,
like before. I mean, it's like this blessing of time. Um,
yeah.
and I would do all of my Qigong exercise and I did like a straight 30-minute meditation. I started reading Self-Realization Fellowship
Hmm.
by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I started really getting into just like his methodology.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in Kriya Yoga. And I there was one meditation he had, and he said like it's purely a meditation to know God. And the way it worked, and the meditation was very simple. It was like you would actually just focus on the third eye, and you would pray, essentially. So I was doing this twice a day. In addition to, I would do that. I'd wake up in the morning, 7:30 to 8. I do straight meditation. But the interesting thing was there was actually I was talking with monks that could give you advice on the meditation. And the interesting thing about it was that during that meditation, the pulse was going crazy. Like, because you're supposed to meditate on the third eye. And I'm thinking, can I even do this? Because as I'm meditating on the third eye and praying, the pulse is like, felt like it was like someone's hitting a hammer into my lower abdomen. I'm
Wow.
thinking like, should I just circle it as I go? Because I'm about to do that anyway. And as soon as I finish this, and I was talking with the monks and John, they were they didn't know what to say. They were like somewhere between amazed, almost in awe. I was like, listen, I got this really. I didn't get into the whole thing about my qigong practice with them, but but
They
I
were
but
surprised that you knew as much as you knew, though,
they were
I
shocked.
imagine.
They
Yeah.
were shocked. They
Yeah.
didn't know they didn't really know how to counsel me. But the interesting thing that happened though was like that. All of that meditation really changed my personality. I felt so happy. I was bliss filled. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. Nothing bothered me at all. And I felt like really close to God. I was reading the Bible. I was reading, Paramahansa Yogananda. I was locked into my meditations, and I lived in like a 6 foot. I mean, the small, like a really small 6 tatami mat room, like a one room. And
Yeah. A
so
cell.
yeah, basically. But I
Yeah.
was so happy, and I was doing my exercise, and eventually, I honestly, John, for about there was about a 3 month period where I was considering becoming a monk, just like kind of moving into the monastery with these
Wow.
guys. And I was
How old are
really
you? How old are you at this point?
at this point I was 29.
Wow.
So I left Atlanta, and I was like, and then you know what happened. Of course you do. I met a girl. And
Yeah.
so I started hanging out with the girl. And listen, one of the most dangerous things to your practice, I don't know how you feel about this, but meeting a women, if you meet a woman, it can be great. It can be wonderful. It can really lift up your life. But when you're deep into that sort of meditative practice, it's a side road as well. Women can be extremely demanding, in so many different ways. Some of it's just nature, you know.
Agreed. Totally
That's
agree with you.
it's just
Totally
the way it is.
agree.
And so little did I know that a lot of these Japanese girls are watching these sort of 90s American movies like Father of the Bride, Home
Yeah.
Alone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in these movies, I mean, what is there? There are these massive 90s houses,
Yep.
right? And you got like
Yep.
these mansions.
It's like
And
heaven.
right, yeah.
Like,
The
yeah.
white picket fence, the
Yep.
2.3 kids, the
Yep.
dog going around barking, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the sort of lovely, pleasant drama of family life. And meanwhile, the girl I'm marrying, that her, I mean, the houses there, the suburban houses in Hiroshima, Japan are much more modest than
Yeah.
what's
I know. I've been there. I've seen it.
right, yeah. It's than what's going on in these movies. So I think in the back of her mind, I mean, I'd always planned to return to America at some point, but at this point in Japan, there's no pressure to do anything. It's
Mm.
not the same. When you're in America, there is a keeping up with the Joneses type
Yep.
ideology that infects
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
It's
Agreed.
never enough. No
Agreed.
matter how much you have, it's not enough. Like,
Yep.
you have your own house? Do you have a house at the shore? Oh, you got a house at the shore? Do you got a house in South Carolina? You got any rental units? How much money you got saved up for college? Where are you sending your kids? What sort of programs you got them in? All of this kind of thing. There's
Yeah.
none of that. There's none of that. There's none of that pressure in Japan. You can be happy making like
Yep.
$35,000 a year,
Yeah.
and you're
Yep.
respected as a teacher.
Yep.
And I was good with it, to be honest with you. But I think my wife was I think in the back of her mind, she was thinking, you know what? I want that Father of the Bride house. And so I started studying. I didn't know anything else. All right, I'm gonna study for the GRE. So I studied for the GRE, like from, portion of that morning period that I had, got my scores. I wrote this essay called Kyoto School Philosophy. And so my grades at UVA were good, but not great, like 3.1.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
UVA is like Harvard. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. I didn't
A
realize.
B at UVA, like compared to a regular 4-year college, is like A
Right. Yeah.
plus.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize that at the time, but it was like, but now I'm applying to grad schools. And so I wrote this essay. So I applied to Florida State, UPenn, Cornell, and UVA. And so Florida State gets my stuff and they're like, all right, yeah, you can come here, but you got to pay. Um,
Out of state
you,
tuition.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's going to be tough. University of Virginia was the same thing. They're like, you can come here, but you got to pay. You got to pay out of state tuition, by the way. I'm like, why? I'm a resident of
You're a
Charleston.
resident. Yeah.
And they're like, no, you're not. You're in Hiroshima. You got to pay.
Mm.
And UPenn did not even write me back. They cashed my check and didn't even
Jeez.
give me a rejection letter. And I tried to call them up and they're like, we don't even know you. I'm like, but you cashed my check. Click. And I was like, all right. So I'm thinking like, well, maybe I can figure out something at Florida State. And then I got this email from this guy named Naoki Sakai from Cornell University. And he just said, and the email says, Mr. Ravenell, I am the foremost expert in the world of Kyoto School philosophy and would like to invite you to study at Cornell University. And I was like, oh, wow, that's great. I got into Cornell. The next day, I got another email that said, we are offering you a 2-year full scholarship, $27,000 a year stipend to study at Cornell. And so,
Wow.
and so I'm on the train from Hiroshima to Asaminamiku, which is like built north of Hiroshima where I was living at the time. In Japan, everybody is stoic like this. No emotion
Mm,
ever. Everyone's extremely stiff, especially on public transportation. And I
yeah.
was kind of the same way. I'd been there 4 years, but then I saw this text and I just started going, going to Cornell. And
Boy, that was
everyone,
that's not the way they do it.
no, no, not at all. Like, I mean, if you tell a Japanese person like you're like, Kenji-san, you have just hit the pick five. You are now a multimillionaire. He'd be like,
Huh. It's a little bell.
that's right, that's right. That would be it. And I'm going crazy. And people on the train, nothing. I'm like, I got into Cornell, full scholarship. It's like I'm not even there. And it's several times in Japan. So once, to that point, once I was like riding my bike in an extremely busy street, and I
Yeah.
hit like the front brake too hard, and the bike flipped over on top of me, and the
Whoa.
bike the bike is on me, and I can't get out, and I'm injured. And John, people are walking around me like I'm not even there. It's like they don't even see me. And I think it's just like I know what they're thinking because I know like the Japanese mind, I think they're thinking something effective. Wow, this foreigner has so horribly shamed himself by flipping the bike on him that we're just going to ignore him. We don't want to add to his shame. And maybe things have changed a bit. That was like 2003. That was 23 years ago. But to that effect, that was kind of the Japanese. But I told at that point I was married. I told my mother-in-law. They were very happy, and
So you married in Japan,
I did.
right?
Yeah, I got married in
Okay.
Japan, and that's when I applied to schools, and I got to Cornell, and it was a different level of scholarship,
Mm.
even than University of Virginia. I was like after about 2 months of studying there, I was honestly, I thought, holy, you know what? I was like, I am not nearly as smart as I thought I was. I was like, am I dumb? And I was like, and so I was like, wow, these kids are picking up on everything at speeds I've never seen before. And so so at UVA, John, I barely studied. I
Yeah.
would, I would get up, I would do like third year, get up, I'd do Qigong. I'd go to class. I'd come down to the studio with you from 4 to 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
We'd do the adult class from 4 to 5:30. We'd drink some tea from
Yeah.
6 to 7. We would do Tai Chi with some of the newer students. After
Yeah.
that, I'd go get something to eat, go home, play the guitar for a couple hours, go to bed. At Cornell, I would wake up at like 7 a.m., catch the bus. I would study from 8 a.m., take classes until 8 p.m. I would
God,
get back, eat dinner for like, 45 minutes, study from 9 p.m. until 4 or 5 in the morning
my God.
every day. And
Wow.
and I got better grades. I got straight A's at Cornell,
Wow.
but I was killing myself. And I remember like midway through the semester thinking like, okay, I had to like, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm dying now. I feel my body dying. But luckily, all those years of doing Qigong and having a good diet, I feel myself, wasn't that I was dying, but I felt myself spending all of that accrued energy extremely quickly. And so in Japan, I had the opportunity to practice Qigong, meditation, 3 hours a day. Cornell was like, 15 minutes on 3 hours of sleep every day. Needless to say, just to wrap that part of it up, like what I learned was that like 2008, the market crashed.
Yep.
Getting a, getting a job in East Asian literature was what I learned was that like so for example, they're some of the most intelligent people in the world. They're like I graduated like I'd meet a girl, she's like I graduated from Todai, the Harvard of Japan. I did also got an undergrad degree from Yale, and now I'm getting my PhD at Cornell. And they came in one day and they said like, Billy, I'm so happy. I'm like, I got a job. I'm like, oh, where are you working? You got you got all these degrees. You speak five languages. I got a job teaching Japanese at Texas Tech for $33,000 a year. And I was like, uh-oh. I was like, whoa. I was like, and I was like, wow, this and you got people that have been there in Ithaca for like 10 years. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of where I'm going. And after I met her, I was like, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to. And we just had a baby. I'm like, I can't be here for 10 years at $27,000 a year.
Yeah.
It's not possible. So I went and needless to say, took the LSAT, went to law school. I got a scholarship to Temple Law, the Beasley School of Law. Um, went to Philadelphia. Um, fast forwarding in time, became an elder care attorney, which really brought me full circle back to Qigong practice. Because one of the things you see with elder care practice and people getting older is that, um, listen, youth and energy and health is gold. I mean, I work with people who are like on the cusp of they've saved up hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then suddenly they're in a position where they got to spend 12 to $15,000 a month
Wow.
in skilled care. My father, um, he was thank God, he was healthy until he wasn't, until around page like 79. He called me, he says like, hey, Billy, I have ALS and I'm looking up, the Lou Gehrig's disease. And he was in a position where, for a while we were spending like $21,000 a month on his care. We had people coming into the house. Um, and when you lose health, you've lost something significant. And that's what I've learned with elder care. And as much as I work with families to try to preserve as many assets as possible so that they can afford to afford that care and potentially pass something on to the people that are going to inherit assets. Um, when you've lost health, you've lost something significant, which that and with the epidemic or the pandemic that occurred
Hmm. Hmm.
with COVID really got me like seriously back into studying Qigong. Like, and there were time periods just because of starting my own business, being in grad school, it wasn't possible to study as much as to practice as much as I would prefer. Um, those like the pandemic, I really started hitting it like back to hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And I'll say
Hmm.
something else, John, that period of time period when and so I would feel something like during the pandemic. Sometimes I'd wake up in the morning, my chest would feel itchy. Like my lungs were just like really, really itchy. And I have to get up and I could practice and dissipate that by circling the pulse
Hmm.
around like up and down Renmai, around the microcosmic orbit, like
Right.
out the hands. And I was doing extremely well for like almost 2 years. Like the pulse was like I'd be at night. The pulse would like it was like a drum. Yeah, 'cause when you're practicing that much, it was like a drum in my lower abdomen before I went to sleep. Um, but here's the thing is that again, like surprisingly, all of that practice, it made me sexually ravenous. Like absolutely ravenous. And I was very disciplined. I was extremely disciplined. I think that was another key part of being able to get the pulse initially. was I
Yep.
was extremely sexually disciplined.
Hmm.
And in fact, like quickly just going all the way back to that psychic that I met. When we first met, and she was reading me. She's like, all right, yeah, I can see Qigong in your aura. One of the things she said was like, she goes, this is exactly what she did, John. She goes, wow, you are very restrictive with sexual energy. And then she stopped and she said, you are extremely restrictive with sexual energy. You are extremely restricted with sexual energy. And I remember at that time period, John, I had let nothing slip for like maybe like 11 months.
What do you mean
Nothing.
by that? Ejaculate?
Nothing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing. For like 11 months.
Thank you for bringing this up because this has been the subject of the previous two podcasts. So thank you for
No,
bringing that up.
absolutely. No, that was I think a key part
Totally.
of of my practice. And so long story short, during the COVID period, there was a period where I got extremely busy at work because people were dying.
Yes.
Like a lot of my clients and the older
The
population,
elderly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, were passing away. I was doing a lot of work with the state administrations, helping family coordinate the transfer of assets and that kind of thing, and just became started to practice a bit less, became a bit undisciplined,
Hmm.
with just in my marriage. And two things happened. One, my wife got pregnant, and we got our third baby. I'm thankful for that. I guess I could thank you as well for
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
And but I'm very grateful to have the third baby. She's a blessing. And but also I did get COVID. I got sick. Just I think the lack of sleep, like and just like I had really been I was holding the line with with my health, my defenses against this virus, the coronavirus, and
Yeah.
it felt like I was under assault.
Yeah.
I could feel it in my liver, and I was able to beat it off. But when the practice subsided, I got COVID,
Hmm.
and it took, and it was two pretty bad weeks. Um, but I think that having qigong helped me lift out of that
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Uh, but what I found is like what a blessing to be able to at least have a practice where I can combat against those types of
Yes.
assaults on the body, but also, man, the hope. I mean, there are videos out there of 95-year-old men like practicing qigong
Yeah.
hard. There's one video out there purportedly of a 119-year-old guy,
Oh, I haven't
practicing.
seen this. You'll have to
Yeah,
forward
yeah,
that one
I'll
to
send
me.
that to you. 119 years old doing like qigong.
Wow.
And the hope is that, let me tell you, if you have the choice of being, like a lot of my clients come in and they're like, yeah, we've saved up some money, four or $500,000. Now we're looking at having to spend all that,
Yep.
15 to $20,000, you know, a
Yep.
month versus can we start to adapt? Can we start to take on and build as just a part of our daily routine a a practice that could potentially preserve our health?
Hmm.
It it's a no-brainer in what they're thinking. And
Well, it's
you know,
amazing that that we have an attorney walking around in one of the biggest metropolitan areas in the country with this knowledge. You got to be one of a kind. There's no other
I
lawyer
yeah, I don't know any.
that's
And
going
I
to
just
have this information that you have, this knowledge, this wisdom.
and Yeah, let me tell you, and I just came back yesterday from an elder care conference in Harrisburg. And this it's just in elder care attorneys, elder care practitioners, people that deal with in this area of the law, or just like in health. And
Yeah.
um this should be I mean, this is it. People, people want to preserve longevity as long as possible. Um, this is a key way to do it.
Well, you should consider teaching other lawyers
I'd love to. I have,
because, they got to have the resilience,
yep.
if they want to build up their resilience, you're the guy, and you have the practical experience of being a lawyer and living with the practice. And as you know, when you go about your regular day, inevitably there's some nugget that emerges where you see the ordinary and this miraculous kind of internal life that you have kind of overlay each other. And it really, a person who has this practice has the capacity to just grasp things that other people can't see and won't see because precisely because of the environment you mentioned, because of the competitiveness, the keeping up with the Joneses,
Yeah.
the avaricious desire to acquire more and more material wealth,
Hmm.
and at the expense of of your life force, which is, and I'm going to throw a big word out here because I'm going to bring this up later on in other podcasts. Human existence is hylomorphic, to
Mm.
use an Aristotelian term. So what that means is essentially hylomorphic. Morphe is a Greek word that means structure or shape, and then hylo means stuff. So your appearance and the human body, and in particular the five fingers, as I was taught this by an Aikido master in Japan. This guy's
Mm.
he's the ex vice minister of defense who told me that the key to understanding East Asian philosophy was the hand. And you look at his five fingers, they all kind of radiate down into a central one in the palm. And those five fingers represent the five elements, which corresponds to Chinese medicine. So there, your body is telling you everything you need to know. If you look at the shape, head, four appendages, that's five. Your body actually recapitulates the structure of the hand. So, just the East Asians have the stuff, and this vice minister guy, I could tell, never talked to a non-Japanese person or probably even other Japanese people unless they were in his Aikido system about this. And he told me that his instructor could breathe his soul out of his body
Oh, wow.
and then bring it back.
Wow.
So, I mean, I don't know whether that's true or not, but I totally respect this man, and he was at a very high official level. You don't get people just popping off like that at his level. I mean, there's
Sure.
something really
Sure.
deep about that. But anyway, my point is that reality is energy and matter together, and the ordinary life, the life of the pursuit, the avaricious mindset that you have identified rightly, I think, as problematic and as a kind of a nemesis of a practitioner who's trying to preserve his health, um, is that it's just stuff.
Mm.
And there's no energy. They don't understand it. If energy is talked about at all, it's gasoline, uh,
Yeah.
a furnace, heat, electricity, stuff like that, stuff on the electromagnetic spectrum. And you and I both know that this energy that we feel, which gets you to the pump, to the inside of your body, um, is special. It's like, I mean, I've mentioned before on previous podcasts of being able to do things that defy electromagnetism. And I've had arguments with physicists about this and people that I've done research with, they just scoff at what I say. And I'm like, well, you're ignorant. You don't know. It
Right.
literally is a language that is deeper than language. It's felt. So let me move us. Do you have anything else to say before I move to the last slide?
No, no, let's go ahead.
Anyway, that was a fantastic story. Thank you for sharing.
Oh,
There's
my
so
pleasure.
much in there. I might have to have you back to go into some details because I know there's more you can say.
No, sure.
But I want to come back to a comment that I made earlier, I think in both podcasts before. See if I can move you here. There we go. Um, this is a human fetus, and it looks more like a dinosaur. There you can see the foot. and you can see the fingers. But look here, this is what the highlight here is that at this level, when you were in utero, this is, I think, probably in the first couple of weeks, is what a human fetus looks like. Look where the heart is. That red glowing center is the heart. It is in the lower abdomen. And, I can talk, if you go into the history of Westerners that have tried to kind of grasp very similar ideas, um, Freud, you can go back to Freud. Freud believed that the subconscious were your internal organs, that it was the involuntary nervous system and the organs that are down there pumping and digesting and secreting enzymes and so on, and as well as the heart. Um, then you go into the 20th century, you get Carl Jung, you get Wilhelm Reich, another wild guy, but their stuff is very similar to traditional Chinese medicine. And if you go back into the Middle Ages in Europe, go back into, and also um, African, South American, so-called primitive medicine or magic, you find parallels to traditional Chinese medicine and to medieval medicine. It was like this ancient knowledge based on the body and based on energetics. So there are Western people that have kind of sniffed around this. But what I find interesting is that you can look at the morphology of an embryo and see that your heart started around your navel, where your umbilical cord is. And very interestingly enough, my teacher, original teacher, Wang Junhua, said that when you feel the pulse below the navel, his expression was "yo haizi," and there's the Chinese characters for it, which means have child. And this gets me to the system that, and this people should not underestimate the degree to which mainland Chinese have embraced this traditional practice. What we get are these sort of wash off commercial efforts of people trying to export it and teach it to people in the West to make money. But mainland Chinese uh, authorities had access to the very highest levels of knowledge. They sequestered this stuff in institutions and they studied it scientifically. And they have knowledge of this stuff that goes far beyond what anybody in the West even suspects. And I have some friends in Singapore and Japan who, they know Chinese and they interact with Chinese people, and they've told me some really surprising things. And if you remember, Billy, when I first started teaching, I introduced you guys to kind of a magical level of Qigong, and it was pushed forward by a guy named Yenxing. And I,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
had like a little pamphlet that I printed for you guys, and it were all these like wild claims about how he could denature radioactive isotopes from 1,000 kilometers away,
Wow.
and just things like that. And he was discredited. And I almost think it was like a government campaign to discredit him because they did not want people in the West to know what they were up to. And I'm going to get into this in future podcasts. I have evidence that this is true. But anyway, the reason I'm focusing on this is that, and particularly this style of Qigong is called Zhineng, was that in 1999, after my first book was published, actually it's 1998, I was invited to go to China at a very high level, and I met with the guy that was in charge of all Qigong. And he had me sit for 3 hours in front of the representatives of the Zhineng Qigong system. I had lunch with them as well, and they presented this scientific study that involved over 5,000 people. And only in China could you get away with this. So they just rounded people up and moved them onto a military base, and they
Okay.
forced them to practice. They said, you are going to participate in this. They all had diseases. They had 220 different
Okay.
kinds of diseases.
Wow.
They gathered them up, because they have such control over their people, and they're also really cooperative, kind of like the Japanese would cooperate too if
Right.
they did something like this. So they gathered them up, put them on a military base, and studied them over a course of, I don't know, maybe a year of them making them do Zherneng, and they had psychologists on board that would kind of counsel them through mental problems that they had. But anyway, they then produced a flawed medical report, and I had a doctor with me go over it, and it just wouldn't have passed muster with
Okay.
medical scientists in the U.S. Um, but the fact is, they had this enormous amount of data, and even though it didn't fit, neatly into the little boxes that we have created in the West, this is what constitutes an actual valid study and so on. It was tremendous amount of data. And they were curing things, they were claiming to have
Huh?
cured things like esophageal cancer, pancreatic cancer, really serious diseases, and a whole bunch of different ones. And the findings were kind of really amazing. And, when I brought it back, it was dismissed by UVA medical doctors. I showed them the stuff and they were like, oh, they didn't do the study right.
Right.
But instead of going like, well, let's go back and examine this data. So now, so this was 98. About a year later, Falun Gong happened.
Right.
Falun Gong exploded. The Chinese
Yeah.
shut down the entire discussion of Qigong. You can't even get access to this information anymore.
Right.
So I was really lucky in that I was privileged to be shown this. And for me, I didn't need to be shown because I had already seen a picture of an embryo just in doing my own research before, as I was writing my first book in the early 90s. I opened up, I think it was a National Geographic, and it was a picture like this. And I went, good Lord, the heart starts down in the belly. I didn't know that. I mean, it was an amazing picture. Actually, might have been earlier than this. I couldn't even really make out a face like that in the picture that I had. I looked for that exact picture. It's gone now. I can't find it.
Mm.
But anyway, I knew that, and I'd had the experience of Yohaiza, and so I knew what they were talking about with Zherneng. And so we were very lucky, all of us were, in that my teacher taught me, and then I was able to come teach you, and it landed on rich soil in your case. And I think it had to do with certain character traits in you, um, that I've already, I mean, I've formally recognized these traits now. And then as I move forward and try to educate and create instructors, the qualities that you exemplified are going to be right up front and center. Um,
Yeah.
and Yeah, I think it's extremely important, and you've learned the lesson, of sexual energy.
Yeah.
Western civilization promotes the wasting of sexual
Yeah.
energy,
Mhm. Absolutely.
and we're rewarded for it. And it's a very strange thing if you think like why. You start asking deep questions about how this happened. It leads you in some very interesting and strange places. All right, let me stop sharing here and get back.
Yeah, speaking of that, one thing I wanted to ask you is so I have always had this like aspiration to return to Dagobah, I mean Charlottesville, and complete some aspects of my training. So we took it a very long way. I think I was practicing the third level Qigong, but I'd always surmised that just I'm curious how the practice might have changed because when I learned it, well, this was, it was pretty much from 1991 to 1995.
Mhm.
And there were some very specific things, but just having, kept up with, some of your writings over the years, seems like there are now some differences as far as, and I was just curious if maybe you wanted to talk a little bit about that. I'd be interested in knowing.
Yeah, well, the biggest difference is I no longer encourage projecting chi from one person to another.
Okay. Gotcha.
If you remember back when you were learning, I think I was pretty sure I was pretty encouraging of it. I mean, that's how I was taught. And they were particularly focused on male, female. So male, female practicing together, which is tantric. I
Right.
mean, ultimately,
Yeah.
and I began to see how mental health and these character traits were important. I don't know whether you remember Maybelline or
Oh
not.
yeah, I remember her, sure.
Okay. Well, Maybelline was a raving lunatic, but she was functional. I mean, she had a job, a high level job as a mechanical engineer. I mean, she was
Oh, I see that.
designing Apache helicopters and
Oh no, I
Tomahawk
didn't know that.
missiles and stuff like that for
Oh
Sperry
wow.
Marine, but she was crazy. I mean, she had, and when you got into her background, you found out she was brought up in an old school Chinese family. So the husband or her dad had like five wives, and she was like the third child of the third wife, and so
Wow.
she was just disrespected. The guy was a drunk and
Mm.
beat the the mothers in front of her, and so she escaped. Now I don't. There's a like a big gap in her history, but she escaped and came to the U.S. and got educated over here, and then got into a marriage, had a couple of kids, and then her marriage went to hell because she was not mentally well.
Mm.
But like like a good East Asian, a high achieving intellect, she could willfully force herself to go do work and make money.
Mm.
And very Japanese, like that's it. I'm going to go do this. But when then her health started going, she started having all kind of psychosomatic health issues. Then she came to me. She told me that she could tell from my voice that I was a true master. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't, and so she shows me these newspaper articles that she was reading from Hong Kong where they were making claims like that. So there was a gossip level, kind of hysterical subculture in East Asia that, I mean, I'd been a part of when I was over in China, but I didn't realize how it had trickled out and how it was getting to overseas Chinese like her. And so I was like, okay, well, come on in, I'll try to teach you. But I ended up having a really tough time with her. And I finally said to her, like, I think you need to go talk to a therapist. Now, in hindsight, I don't think I should have said that, because I mistrust psychotherapy now. I think psychotherapy has a model of a human being that is false. Um, I think it does not recognize spirituality. It recognizes spirituality only as a kind of delusory choice.
Okay.
Okay, if you want to believe in God, go ahead. But it's like, no, that doesn't really exist. Only in your head or in people who think like you. But I thought maybe I could get a psychologist to create a kind of bridge for her to kind of get her shit together enough, pardon my French,
Right.
to where she could actually do the practice. Because my experience is if you have an emotional problem, and you haven't dealt with it, guess where it goes? It goes to the lower center. It goes down
Oh,
in there. So when they try to release that, they can't. Now I've had multiple cases where I've seen that. For me, I don't need any convincing. And again, I have that framework of the Zhernong of the you're getting back to your inner child. I mean, you literally are doing that. So if your childhood was effed up
mm.
and you were abused or whatever, you can't release it. And so she couldn't. She was unable to get it, and she became angry. And then when I said you need to go see a therapist, she was insulted.
Mm.
So what she did was she contacted Wong
Oh yeah, I remember that.
and then took
I
her
do.
money and flew to Beijing. And at the time when she was contacting him on the campus of Beijing University, there was only one telephone, hard line, landline that you could make an international call with. And it was
Right.
located in the central center of campus in a cement blockhouse,
Oh my gosh.
like a cell. And they had one little old Chinese man in there maintaining it 24/7. I
Oh my
guess they
gosh.
had shifts,
Wild.
So if you wanted to call the US from China, you had to go at midnight or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock to get someone in the US.
Right.
It's a 12-hour difference. So she managed to get in touch with him on the phone in China, and she told him that um, I don't know how to put this delicately. I mean, essentially, she told him I was a racist and that I
Oh no.
hated Chinese people and that I was undermining him. And then he said, "Well, you come over here and we'll, straighten this out." And then immediately, my book was in the middle of publication
Oh,
at this
that's right.
time.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
he writes my publisher and says, "I'm going to sue you if you publish this book." So this is all because she flew over there and
Wow.
told him all these lies. And eventually I won. We went to court.
Oh wow. Did you go
And
to, wait, I didn't realize it went that far.
yeah, we went to court. We won the first time and he appealed it. We won it the second time.
Wow. So I
So,
guess
and
I got
it was the first instance where a Chinese person sued an American or a Westerner for over intellectual property. Because if you remember, it was the other way.
right. Oh
The
yeah, yeah,
West, we're
yeah.
always
You're
suing
right.
them. You
Oh
stole
yeah.
from us. He was
Right.
saying you stole from me. So what came out um, in those proceedings was that Wong did not create that Qigong system. He learned it from other people, and he
Okay.
learned it from a variety of people. He didn't just learn it from his master in the village, like it wasn't
Right.
Mr. Miyagi. It was
Gotcha.
he learned from the institute. He learned
Right.
from the Beijing Wushu Institute. He learned from other Qigong teachers at Beijing University. He stole from them and they stole from him. It was like Silicon Valley. That was the truth of the matter. So
No. Wow.
that period when I was there was this massive incubation of what I would call body technologies. So you have movement, you have these breathing techniques, you put these things together,
Right.
and you have a technology of sorts for awakening the Heidza, the baby, inside of you, that primordial energy that
Okay.
you can heal with. So, so getting back to your question, so what I did was I was like, okay, I was running into problems with scientists who would say we can't prove chi exists, blah blah blah. So I went, okay, well it's clearly vascular because it's a pulse. So let's dig into that. So I came up with a theory. This is after you left, and it was from interacting with some medical students at UVA. We identified the autonomic nervous system and key elements of it that go into the heart and also feed into the immune system. And it was great. I had a theory, but I didn't have the research. All I had was anecdotes. So then so the book two was the theory and some anecdotal evidence. And then they were like, oh, great, but you don't have any real research. So then I did four research projects at UVA that proved it. It not only proved that it worked, but the only possible explanation beside it being spooky, woo-woo stuff
Right.
would be that these systems that I identified through the theory had to be what were working. And then I got a bunch of medical guys to kind of get on board with it and go, yeah, this looks like it is the case. So to go back to your question, no more putting your chi out to other people. You have to
Gotcha.
be really careful about that. Although I did last night, I used my chi to heal my son
Okay.
who had a stomach
Okay.
ache. I took it out.
Now
Just
we have
pulled.
three sons.
I have four.
Okay.
I have four.
Four
Two
sons.
by two by my previous marriage. I think you were at the wedding.
I was, yeah. I think I
Yeah.
wasn't that picture of the wedding? I can't remember
No,
now.
no, no. That was just for the school. That was when I was trying to make Wong feel better. I was like, look, I'm building this school up for you.
Okay,
And then
gotcha.
he just took that, thanks to Maybelline, and just said, well, I'm going to sue you,
Oh,
and I
wow.
want I want all the ownership. I mean, it was crazy.
Gosh.
Anyway, he and I got together again and made peace.
Okay, good.
So, and I've since, because I got to these higher levels in China, I have been connected to much higher level. In fact, this shirt right here, whoops, I'm kind of backwards. You can see here, this way. That symbol, where is it?
Oh, I can see it. Yeah, yeah, I can see
Here,
it.
I'm mirror imaged here. That symbol right there, see, is two E's,
Mhm.
but they overlap like yin
Right.
yang. That's the Beijing Martial Arts Institute. So
Okay.
I'm tied in with them at the very highest level, and then even further up in the government chain, and respected because I did actual hard research that showed this stuff. Now, even though I've done that, I think I've like, all right, I did it. And then I encounter another East Asian who goes, no, you haven't, because there really is this energy that you know it's there because you're putting it out. You felt that
Right.
it's real, and here's the theory behind how it works. And I was like, oh, I dug into that. So now
Mhm.
that's the next step is to go
Okay.
in and to identify that energy. But you don't really need it if you have the high-low part of it, your body. Okay.
Right.
If you can feel it in your body, and you start by feeling this energy that Western science won't identify and won't
Knowledge, right? Yeah.
define. Um, but you get inside, that's what you can measure. And the main thing that we can measure is cardiovascular.
Okay.
That cardiovascular signal is an indirect indicator of that energy, this field, this chi. And the, the theoretical term for this is torsion energy. And it's a property of matter, all matter, even dead matter, like
Mhm.
inanimate objects. But a living organism, a human with a heartbeat, is special. And if you go back to Taoism, original Taoism, and remember
Gotcha.
the three emperors, heaven, earth,
Hmm.
human being in between, okay? So the purpose of a human, which is the middle, okay, it's Tien Ren Di. So it's heaven, human being, and then down below, earth. The purpose of the human being is to collect heaven and earth chi and then manage it.
Okay.
Manage it for the earth, manage it for other humans. And that's where Confucianism and all that's what that's about. It's about creating a harmonious society. So that East Asian model really holds up. And the question is, can it be retrofitted, so to speak, into a Western world? And where it runs, where it T-bones directly is popular culture, rock and roll, you know, drugs, sex, drugs, and
Right.
rock and roll, that whole
Right.
9 yards. And now that you have children, you know,
Sure.
you
Hmm.
know you have to protect them from that. And I've got an 18-year-old now that I'm trying to, he's going down the same road you and I went down. I'm like,
Wow.
beware, beware. And he's like, you don't know anything, Dad.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah. Hey.
we
Yeah.
wouldn't listen either. They got to learn the
No.
hard way.
No. Yeah, you're right. Now I got a 17-year-old, and she's
So the
has.
other thing that I think it's important to point out is that we have identified an area in the top of the head
Okay.
that this was discovered at UVA. There are micro lymphatic meningeal vessels in the very top of your head, the crown chakra.
Gotcha.
And that place is the place where your immune system and your brain come together. Because if you know, like historically, they say there's a blood-brain barrier. So your blood doesn't get into your brain. Wrong. It does. So the flow that occurs between these meningeal vessels in your head determines whether or not you get age-related brain disease.
Oh no, that's very interesting.
So, and you should be able to do this yourself. You should be able to place fingers on the top of your own head
Sure.
and then run the pulse
Mhm.
up, and you should feel it going boom, 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 boom. You should feel a little pulsation, and you should be able to get other people to do it. Like get your kids, put your hand there. You don't have to do it. You can do it on your own. Okay.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
so just by that alone, I can demonstrate that I can control pulsatility up here. So at UVA, what they did was they took mice and they artificially blocked the vessels up here with molecules. As soon as they did, they all developed Alzheimer's like. brain conditions. They instantly developed
From
age-related
blocking that.
brain disease by blocking this. Yeah. So, which that's what it does. It gets clogged up with crap,
Is that
with infection, with
right?
just ordinary life, stress, the whole everything, bad diet, all of that clogs this up.
I got you.
So then they unclogged it because they did it artificially
Right.
with molecules. They unclogged it, and the age-related brain disease symptoms went away completely. So if you can do this, you will keep your
Right.
brain
Like hold it there.
young and healthy.
Right. John, let me ask you something. I want to show you a quick picture. Um, oh, by the way, if you're interested, and I'll send you some more information later. Purportedly, I don't have any evidence. This was the guy. I don't know if you can see that. This is the
Yang
guy that apparently,
Shanggong.
yeah, apparently this guy lived to be 119. And
Oh,
there's
this is the guy that you said is doing the Qigong. Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah. He
In
apparently lived,
Bagua.
yeah. Yes, he did. But this manual, there was this one thing. Yeah, his name was Lou. I don't know if you can see that. Lou,
You got to move it more to your right. Yeah.
like over here.
Yeah. Lu Zhijian. Yeah.
Yeah,
Lu
yeah,
Zhijian.
yeah. And I'll
That's a
send
hell
you.
of a stance for an old man right
Yeah,
there.
probably. I mean, there's a lot of video of him on
Hey,
on
let me
YouTube.
pause it for a second. I gotta hit the head.
Okay, all right, you're good.
All
All
right,
right,
we're back. I'll definitely check out the Elder Master and look into his Qigong system. It's interesting, just sort of make a quick comment about that. His routine, it's the repetition. If you know the meaning of the word gong fu, which is where we get kung fu, it means repeating an action over and over again. And the metaphor they use is they grinding a rod into a pin needle.
mm.
So he's doing, like, for example, Bagua. I've really gotten into Bagua the past 10 years, I would say.
Oh,
A
really?
little less than 10. And repeating that form over and over again is really amazing. And it works things. I used to think all these people that talked about it were just full of it, but
Right.
there's a twisting, and I was told in Beijing that it's like taking a dish rag and twisting it like that, a wet dish rag, and wringing it, and the water that comes out is like your chi. So when you do bagua, you twist your hands, twist in various ways like that, and you twist your body, you twist every part of your body, and then you uncoil. And you can deliver a blow with that if you want to. You can coil up and then come out. In fact, all the internal systems kind of make use of that, like Chun style. I
Yeah.
taught you Chun
Yeah, I
style.
do. Actually, I
Chun
learned
is
that.
Chun is really where you get it. You
Right.
can really feel it from that. So anyway, him doing those exercises, I think, are special as opposed to say, I mean, for example, I swim for cardio,
Right.
which is great. It's great cardio, but it doesn't work the whole body the way those wushu forms do, and especially the internal forms. So I just wanted to make a plug for that. His system is based on Bagua, and those movements are probably crucial to what he's gotten out of it. And he's 119. That's just amazing.
Right. He was when he died. I wanted to ask you about that. So when you are, say, for example, setting up basic instruction seminars to people that have never practiced Tai Chi or Qigong before, but they need something that they can repeat, on a daily basis. And so when I was practicing, I started with the Yang style. And then for me, I went into long fist, like Northern Chinese long fist. And I was very athletic, around the
You
age
were
of,
good at it. Yeah.
yeah, 19, I think I started there. And that was kind of like a big part of my practice. But, other people in the dojo, they would go from Yang style to Wu style to Chun style. Then they would do some long fist and what
Very
was the one?
few, very
What was the one that
few,
was sort of like this?
very
And it
few
was
got into long fist like
right,
you.
yeah, it was.
I think
Yeah.
maybe four people made it all the way over
Oh
all
wow,
those
I
years.
didn't
Only
realize
four got to the fourth level.
that was a tough form.
Unbelievably hard.
And
It tore me
yeah,
up.
And do you remember the video you showed in the library where we all got together? We watched like the kind of like the lifestyle of the Wushu monks of the
Yep,
Shaolin Temple.
yep.
Um,
I remember
and,
that.
and you could see how hard they worked,
Yeah,
and that was
yeah,
and that was a part of it. Is it was a
yeah.
lifestyle for us back then. I'd wake up in the morning, do Qigong. The afternoon, I'd come into the dojo. On off days, I was in the gym, lifting weights. I'd at least once a week, I would run about 5 miles. Um, there was some nefarious motivation there for that running. What I was really doing is I wanted to take my shirt off and run around campus. I see like all those 20-year-old girls out there.
Wait a minute, Billy. Can I just say, can you take your shirt off? Because
That's right.
you really do have a beautiful body, and
That's
people
right.
need to see it. People need to see. Come
Perfect.
on, take it off.
That's
All
right. Yeah.
right.
30 years
Sorry.
ago, right? They don't want to see this one now. I promise you. But I but I was asking is so you're doing a seminar, and so for us we had this, you could expect, guilt from 0 to 6 months or 0 to 12 months of like connectedness to a lot of different training. Um, how do you set someone up to be able to get the basics down and really begin to
Well,
benefit from that?
the Tao Lu, or we call it just Tao Lu, which is take one move and repeat it over and over, and you take it apart. Do the
Right,
feet. You teach the difficult step. And then once they learn, and I will not move them up until they learn this. Like my kids, I try to teach them,
right.
and they don't have the patience. I just go, okay, I'm not teaching you.
Mm,
You don't learn.
right.
So they had to have the patience to do the difficult step. Ennis couldn't do the difficult step. He got
Oh,
really
really?
pissed. Yeah,
Really?
yeah, because you had to get
Yeah,
on
I can
one
see that.
leg, and like do slow. He used to
Right.
good. He was like Sundance Kid. He was better when he moved.
Yeah.
He was quite impressive when he moved fast, but when he had to go slow, different
Yeah.
set of muscles, different mind-body connection. Why? Is always the big question. Um, so, and then remember how we would just do the hands standing there like that.
Right.
I think, didn't you do this? Didn't you teach some older people?
Oh
I
yes.
thought you,
I
you told
I
me
I
you
did.
did
Yeah.
that.
No, no, yeah, no, I
That's
did.
exactly the way you do it. And now, if you go on the internet now, you'll see they have this massive campaign with these super cut
Oh
Chinese
yeah, yeah, I've seen
guys
that. The
teaching
Tai Chi
Tai
practice.
Chi
Yeah.
chair,
Right.
sitting in a chair. This guy is like
Right. And he's like built and he's got like this
super built.
massive.
And
Right.
then all these elder people, behind him, like doing these
Right.
movements, which, it's kind of ridiculous that they're trying to say
It
that's how he got like that. That's not
right.
true.
It is ridiculous, right? It
Yeah.
looks almost like military calisthenics
Yeah.
then.
That's what they did. So, I mean, I think it's important to be physically impressive, which is why Long Fist is good. And that was always my calling card. I'd go to these karate guys and I would just go, check this out.
Yeah.
And they would be like,
No, you're right, because they used to teach like what was it called? Shotokan or something like that at UVA.
yeah.
They're big like Shotokan group. And I used to go there in the gym and after I'd go and lift for a while, then I'd go upstairs and stretch and I would go through my long fist and they'd be wild.
Yeah.
They saw me like going through those forms because
Oh,
I'm
it's impressive. It's impressive. All right, now we've covered the physical, unless you want to stick on this for a little bit longer. But I really want to get the conversation because this is one of the ways in which you stood out as a special student. It's the spiritual level. And I mentioned earlier you were one of the only, if not the only student that would openly talk about your spirituality and you would talk about Christianity, which was taboo, among the
sure,
brainy
sure.
types and the new age. And we had a lot of, by the way, I don't know whether you knew this, but we had the head of the Universalist Unitarian Church,
Oh, I
which
did
is
not.
right across the street from UVA. And that's where they all go. That's where all the enlightened professoriate go. And, it's Ralph Waldo Emerson, his transcendentalism is where they got started. But in that ideology, Jesus is like a good teacher. That's all he is. He's not God.
Right.
Christians
Right,
stand
right.
out because they
Sure.
say Jesus is God, and that pisses people who don't believe that off, makes them mad. They see it, they misread it as arrogance, but you just like openly said it. And I was fascinated by that. And, I was a closeted Christian. You've heard of closeted gays? I'm a closeted
Yeah.
Christian. So I
Oh,
came out of the
really?
closet after I got hurt and was saved. I had a miracle. And I wrote about it in my second book. So I'm not going to go
Oh,
there. I'm
fascinating.
going to bring that up
Fascinating.
at a later date. But you always stuck in my head because of that. I was like, I believe that everybody's life is kind of a medieval morality tale. You
Yeah.
have purpose. You're here for a reason. God is with you. Angels are with you. Guardian angels are with you. Your ancestors are with you. And you encounter symbols throughout your life. And there are no accidents. And you stuck with me. I was like, pay attention. This guy's story is meaningful to me. And when I had my conversion experience, I thought of you. So I want to come back and explore with you your own spirituality. I want you to share it with the audience.
Sure,
Take it away.
sure, sure, absolutely. At the time period when I just began that practice of Qigong, I had really, and I'll go through very quickly, there's really three major instances of kind of encountering Christ, in my life. And you talk about the concept of dying daily and being born again. That's really been, a part of my experience. Um, Initially, like age 19 years old, trying to grasp and get a hold of Qigong. I really prior to practicing, I would ask, Jesus and the Holy Spirit to help me wrestle with this
Wow.
meditation, to empower me to be able to to wield the pulse,
Hmm.
to be able to do good, so to speak, with it. And to be honest with you, John, there was real sacrifice with that. Like so for someone who is meditating, a 19-year-old kid who's a 20-year-old kid who's meditating 3 hours a day, I can promise you, my nightlife looked extremely different than
I remember. I
than,
remember.
than 95% of the University of Virginia. Even the band I was in, like a lot of the shows I was playing back then, was this sort of straight edge environment. It wasn't the typical kind of rock and roll. I know we kind of went over the music before, but that was certainly
But the babes were part of it.
yeah, sure. I mean,
Yes.
there's always that
So,
temptation,
yeah.
there's always that temptation. And but that was certainly a part of revving up my practice. I always associated with that. And I thought that was instrumental in being able to meditate for that, for that period of time with the right intentions. Um, and it was later, actually, there were two instances. One was just I think that when you are meditating that much, you become open to having dreams, having inspirations, having gaining the type of intuitive impulses to to step into the right, sort of pathways of destiny, if you will.
Especially if your intentions are good, but if your intentions are bad,
Oh, sure. Yeah,
you
then you
can
can
step into the wrong thing.
right. And then
So,
I think that if your intentions are bad, I think you're at sort of risk with Qigong practice to I mean, who knows what you might be funneling into yourself.
yeah.
If that's the case, that can be kind of dangerous. There was one instance where that has really influenced my life where I had just gotten I was in my second law firm, and I was working for a guy he was out of state, but he was running this law firm in Pennsylvania, and I didn't really think about this, but I was the only attorney in this law firm. And I had paralegals, but it was all set up by this guy out of state. And so I was essentially following his direction, going out, meeting clients. We had fairly strict standards as far as I go out, I meet clients, I do their estate plans. But before I joined that law firm, the lawyer before me had done things in a completely different way. And essentially, what he had done was he had agents go out and meet with clients and do all the consultations and take the money, and he wasn't doing it, which is a big no-no when in law practice.
Yeah.
And this was unbeknownst to me. So anyway, one day I was, you know, the time period, I think I was living in like, I was just getting started, just out of law school. I was, probably about, $300,000 in debt. I had a dream that this is the first dream. I'm gonna go through two dreams. The first dream was, so during the Qigong practice and like I'd been reading these books from the Quest bookshop, which has got to be long gone by now in Charlottesville, Virginia. Are there such thing as bookshops anymore at all, anywhere? It's
Yeah.
come to that. Um, I was really into, astral projection and trying to do astral projection. And it
Ooh.
was something, it never came easy to me, but there were 5 or 6 occasions where I was actually able to like have something beyond a lucid dream is the only way I can describe it. Very difficult to maintain, um, that position where I was like outside of my body and observing things. And it was rare. I couldn't do it on demand. It would be like every few, like, 5 or 6 months, I'd have some sort of experience like that. Very different than a dream or a lucid dream. On this one occasion, I did have this astral projections experience. I went out of my body and I was going up, and I remember that I was meeting. There was always this is going to sound bizarre, but there's this one girl I was friends with at the University of Virginia. We would always meet in the astral world, and
Wow.
we would talk to each other, and it was, hey, John, and I'd say like, let's call her Sue. That's not her real name.
All right.
She would say, I would say, I had this crazy experience last night. I saw you. And she's like, I saw you. And we talk about what we saw. It was really bizarre. Like, it's almost unbelievable. Like, it's like my physical self can't believe what has happened and what we're sharing with each other. So on this one occasion, I met her, and then I was going just up somewhere. And I remember what I remember is like there was this mountain, and out of the corner of my eye, I caught like an image of it. It looked like a guy, like it's about 100, yards away, and it looked something like a guy in a caravan. But immediately I knew, I was like, it's Jesus Christ. And as soon as before I could get the words out, it was like this force hit me, like this
Well,
massive force. And I was like encased in this block of bliss,
wow.
pure bliss. Like, it was suddenly I had forgotten everything, like everything about Billy Ravenell, Earth Life. I was in this block of bliss. And then at some point, it seemed like I was there forever. I start fading into my body, like back into my physical body. And this is the most bizarre thing, John. When I was fading back into my physical body, I could feel my brain, my memories, my experience. They were reaching out to this essence that I'd become in this block and like drinking it back into me. And I was like, oh no, like,
It pulled
you
you
know,
back in.
expletive. I'm becoming Billy Ravenell again. This is horrible. That's really how I felt. I was like, I don't want to. That is 100% how I felt. I just woke up and I was weeping, and like I couldn't put my eyes on this figure, but I knew instantly that is Jesus Christ. So I'm back now. I'm back, in this 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom apartment with my, wife and daughter. We're kind of struggling financially at the time. Um, so I'm like, I'm sort of I'm in an odd state because I'm trying to take all this in, just the block of bliss, back in my physical self. And when you get back in your physical self, it's like this world is so it's hard to describe. It's like there's all these made up rules and ideas, and none of that makes sense when you're in like this the bliss of Christ. And so I get to work, and the paralegal's sitting there, and he's like, "Hey, Bill, how you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm all right." And she goes, "You're being sued." You know, you're and but you know what, John? I was like, "You're being sued by the disciplinary board over, your relationship with clients, and you need to go down a Trooper Road and sit in this hearing. And they suggested you bring a lawyer with you." And I was like, and so here's the first thought I had was, wow, this is this is serious.
Yeah.
This livelihood. I was not worried at all because I was like, that is why Christ visited me last night. Had to be
Wow.
because this is like the worst news in the world.
Yeah,
And this,
that's like jumping out of the window kind of bad stuff.
no, it's horrific. And
Yeah.
um and so I wasn't afraid at all. I was like, you know what? This is going to be the opportunity for real change. Um
Well,
so needless to say that and so all of it, the lawsuit was crap. It was crap. They had nothing on me. I'd done everything the right way.
hmm
I crossed my T's, dotted my I's. It was all because of the previous lawyer. And here's the other thing I found out later. The lawyer that hired me, um, there was something to do with the previous lawyer's family member had been an attorney that worked there who was disgruntled and turned me into the disciplinary board because, she was pissed off over how she was treated. And needless to say, after paying my attorney who represented me about $40,000, the disciplinary board said, "You know what, Ravenell, we got nothing on you. You're scot-free, free to go." So I opened up my own law firm. So now I'm opening up my own law firm, and um, we were fortunate. We just purchased another home, a little bit bigger than that, but everything else went wrong. Just like everything, like there was just a month where we were coming out of COVID. I'd been really sick.
the economy was wrecked.
Yeah, economy was
Totally wrecked.
wrecked. I had some clients that, had owed me a lot of money. Like, and there was there's one day where I'm on the phone with clients, and guy owed me like $55,000. And he was like, "Not paying you." And another person owed me like 10 grand. And like,
Wow.
they're like, "Hey, thank you so much for your work, but we're not paying you. Sorry, times are hard, whatever." Like three clients. It was a lot. I was like, wow, I'm thinking I was kind of dependent on that money, to push my law firm forward this quarter. And I was like, man, I'm thinking I am broke. And like the laundry, like the dryer's broken, the dog is sick. It was like live in a country western music song, so to speak. And then literally, John, my wife walks up the stairs and she's like, "I'm pregnant."
Oh my
I'm
God.
not kidding. This really happened. This really happened. And I was like, wow. And so I'm thinking like it feels like the end of the world. And so that night, I had a dream. I was like, man, so then I'm like down on my luck. I'm like down, you know, I'm down like half a million. If you took law school loans, mortgage, all of that together, it was like impossible to pay any of that back. And that night I had a dream that we should return to our old church that we went to in Philadelphia. And they'd kind of moved, it's about 35-minute drive from where we were. We're kind of up in the burbs, trying to get the kids in a better school. And so I said, "Honey, do you want to go to church tomorrow?" And she's like, "Yeah, let's go." So I drive down to City Life Church, and I had the dream, and in the dream that I had, prior to going down there, I saw my brother-in-law, who's also an attorney, very famous attorney here in Philadelphia. Um, he was up at the front, and he was sort of like giving, he was teaching something to the kids, and it was a very welcoming environment. And we'd been gone from that church for a few years. We joined another church. So it was different. It was a new church, and our first time there, and it was big. It was a very welcoming place, very a very diverse group of people because it was a new church. It was only about at that point, 2020, it's about 2020, 21, it's about 8 years old. And it had started as a new church in 2012 in the middle of Philadelphia. And so, when you start a new church, you can get a diverse group of people coming to the church. So everybody's in there. There are, of course, there's Latinos, Koreans, a lot of black families, a lot of white families. Everybody's worshiping together. And I get there, we sit down and they have coffee. Um, and Pastor Brad starts going to the sermon. And the sermon was like every single issue I was going through financially in my life. The sermon was
Wow.
practical. It was about faith. It's about focus. It was about budgeting. It was about family. And normally I would take notes in the sermon, but it was so on point and it was so like serendipitous that I was just weeping. Like I was just like I was
Wow.
trying not to cry. Um, but the tears just kept coming down as I was hearing it and taking it all in. And end of the service, they said, if anybody needs prayer, and my brother-in-law, like he stood up at the front and I was like, I need prayer. So I go up and I start crying, start weeping. He prays over me. And so then I went home and I wrote this letter to Pastor Brad and I said, hey, that was a great sermon. I really appreciated that. That was really helpful. And I wrote all these terrible things that, well, not terrible, but challenging things I was going through. Um, just like everything that I told you before. But that was helpful and I felt like really upbeat. So I started to pray every day after that. I was like, I mean, we didn't have any money at the time. But I did actually start to tithe everything that was coming in. And, it wasn't, we didn't have enough. I mean, that's just the way it was. But I just kept in mind, the kind of Sermon on the Mount. I was like, Jesus had to feed 5,000 people. They gave him like, what is it, like 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish.
Yep.
And he broke it off and he said, he basically prayed, hey God, this isn't enough, but to
Yeah.
feed all these people, but thank you.
Yeah.
They it expanded. So I kind of kept that in mind. John, I was praying every day, like I'm talking, forehead to the floor type, knees on the ground, forehead to floor type prayer.
Mm.
Essentially the prayer was, I I can't make it now. My kids aren't going to college. This is the end of the Ravenell line unless you intercede for me. And I would visualize. And so eventually the prayer, honestly, it became, I had this, like I'd visualize like this pit, and so eventually it's like as I was praying, I had this vision of this falling in this pit. But at first, and I fell in this pit and it feels like I'm just dropping forever and I'm never going to get out. But I would always look up at some point, and I wasn't that far down. I was like, okay, I felt like I was falling forever, like it was the end of the world, but I'm not that far down. And I would come up, and eventually I would start praying, um, like from the top of the mountain, and I'd feel myself like just filling up this pit, like the debt, the frustration, whatever. Like it's all being filled. And then, sure enough, I kept tithing, I kept going to church. Um, Bit by bit, I started getting in new clients, and you know, the business started to pick up. Um, and eventually, I got in some really like affluent, some really influent clients, and um, and eventually, like unbeknownst to everybody, because I didn't tell anybody, I ended up paying off all my debt, like my
Wow.
student loans,
Wow.
mortgage,
Wow.
credit cards. And for the first time in my life, I was at zero. Like,
Wow.
and people, listen, these credit card companies, they have schemes to hook you on
Yeah.
debt
Yeah, I
from the
know.
time you turn 18 years old. And it happened to me. Like, I was coming up the corner, Charlottesville, Virginia, and literally there's this guy from, I think it was, I think it was a Visa card or something. I just,
Visa. Yeah.
what bank it was, but he had,
Discovery.
Like, yeah, he literally had like candy out, and literally, he was like, "Hey,
Candy.
kid." Literally, John, he was like, "Hey, kid, you want some Reese's Pieces?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Just fill out this form." And all the form was your name and where you lived. And I was like, "Okay, Lefevre dorm, William Ravenell, and I received a credit card in the mail. And like, and since like since that day, I had been in
Instant
debt.
money.
Yeah, right. I just like, right. And I think that credit card was like for $600. But by the end of it, I think that line was like 30 grand or whatever. But it was
Yeah.
debt that I was using. But I was out of debt, completely out of debt. I had enough money. We actually bought um as I mentioned before, with my sort of my wife's expectation about what she could sort of expect, what she expected the houses to be like. We talked about, in America that, a lot of Japanese have this idea that everybody's going to live in these big 90s houses. We bought one of these massive, we were able to buy one of these
A Home
massive
Alone
houses.
house.
Exactly. It's got like,
I
you got to come up and see it someday.
will.
It still astounds me to this day. I thank God every time I walk in that house. It's got these big white columns,
Oh,
swimming
cool.
swimming pool in the back. I finished the basement. I practice Qigong there every morning. I
It's
work my
great.
son out with like baseball practice in the basement. It's
By the
a
way, I enjoy the videos you've been posting on Facebook of your son.
Oh yeah.
He's quite
Yeah,
good at jujitsu.
he is.
Are
Yeah,
you
yeah.
doing that? Are you doing jujitsu
Oh, I,
too?
I cannot because of my knee. I cannot.
Yeah,
Like,
me either. I can't grapple because of my back.
yeah, no,
I'm a striker anyway.
yeah, me too. Yeah, me too, definitely. Like that's, the jujitsu is like, but my son, he's got some he's got some talent. He's an athlete. I think
Yeah.
he must get a
Baseball player, also very good
yeah,
baseball player.
yeah, soccer, and
Okay. Yeah.
he's quite an athlete. But I think martial arts is like he does Muay Thai as well. So he does a lot of like his round kick is it's looks great.
Yeah.
Um, but he's got this he trains a lot of like this dodging
Yeah. With the
work.
ball swinging at you,
Right. Yeah. Like I was more like
bobbing.
yeah, with those Taekwondo practice, I was more apt to like try and block strikes. He gets out of the way and he will follow up and counter you. I'm impressed with his training. I want to get him into, some of the more energetic arts
Yeah.
as well. Now that he's getting to the age where I think he can do that. I mean, his brain is, sports is one of the one area we can actually focus his mind.
Yeah.
Because like it's tough to get him to study, but
Yeah.
he's sharp. I mean, he was reading in kindergarten, but just like the nature that the cultural climate of all these damn screens is like
Agreed.
it's a
Agreed.
battle. It's a
I've had
battle.
real problems with my own children with
Yeah,
that.
it's a battle we fight. But
That's
yeah, it came up. But it really started from the dream, the prayer, and so finally, like, but with his tithing, as you can imagine. Um, I didn't tell anybody about this at all. And I invited my wife to. So once, my wife and kids, we all go to church one day, and the pastor, he had stopped me in the hall and basically said, "Hey, Billy, we have noticed that you essentially," he said, "we have noticed that your tithes have increased. Because, when you're paying off, a half million in debt, I mean, and you're still tithing, whatever you're getting, you can do the math. It was you know, substantial. It was like more than I ever dreamed of being able to make, let alone give away. It was a really blessing. It was a real blessing. Um, and I was kind of I wanted to keep tithing because the more I was tithing, the business continued to increase, and I was like,
that
you know,
is an incredible story.
yeah. And in the Bible, there's this one passage, I think it's Micah, where he says that is the one place where you can test the Lord, where God says, you can test me. If you give 10% to my church, you can say, test me. And
Wow.
so, and I've rarely do I actually bring that out, but I did continue to tithe. And so Pastor Brad actually did a sermon about my experience. And that's when my wife learned that but she didn't, but as he didn't say my name during the sermon, but at the very end of the sermon, he just goes, I want to thank Billy for his testimony. And so but still, like, that's the only time he said my name. So we're in the car, we're driving back.
Yeah.
And my wife says, so I asked her, I said, so what do you think of that sermon? She goes, it was very interesting. It was very interesting, And then my daughter in the back seat, she's like 11, 12 years old. She goes, Dad, was that you? And I was like, she says, like, the dog getting sick, the dryer broke, the dishwasher's not working, the basement's flooded, the black mold in the attic, that was you, that was us. And my wife goes, like, you paid off the mortgage? And then she goes, Mom, he said Billy in the sermon. And she goes, and my wife says, oh, I thought that was Billy from the Bible. And my daughter was like, Billy from the Bible. I'm like, Mom, like, hey, listen. so, in
Wait,
Japan,
wait, we should re-emphasize that your wife's Japanese.
that's right. Yes, she is Japanese.
Born in Japan,
That's
and
right. That's
she's
right.
not
Yeah.
Japanese American. She's
No,
pure
she's not.
Japanese.
She's born in Japan. In Japan, they say you're born Shinto, married Christian, die Buddhist.
Yeah.
And so she didn't have the same sort of rich cultural experience of kind of growing up in the church that my kids have and that I had. So for her, it's quite plausible that there may be a Billy in the Bible. So
Well, there are maybe not in name, but you're certainly an archetype, a type. Your story is in the old parlance a type, and this is medieval theology. A type is an Old Testament prefigure of Jesus. So, for example, David, it's like God saying he's coming. And so
right,
a human will appear and he'll almost do it. He'll almost get there and then he fails. He
right,
sins. Solomon, same thing. So that's where it's called typology comes from. But then later, when you get to the New Testament, there are also types in the New Testament for the new way.
mm,
So the giving, the person who Saul of Tarsus, who struck down, people who are healed miraculously and then told sin no more. That was always the tough one to hear. Was like sin
yep,
no more after you're
right,
healed, And I was like, is there a connection there between it? Because a lot of these people were diseased that he
right.
healed,
That's right.
which is
That's
a
right.
subject for another time. I really want to bring you back because there's so much we can talk about. What I love about this conversation is how we can just keep going.
Right.
Because why? Because you have a special kind of knowledge. I call it interoceptive knowledge. So interoception is the ability to feel inside the body. My son now has it, my 18-year-old. So he's fighting a sinus infection right now.
Okay.
He's into jiu-jitsu too. One of the problems with jiu-jitsu is they get staph infections
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot. And staph infections can get up your nose and cause respiratory problems. So he got one, and so I had him practicing, and he said that he could feel, all the sort of magical, energetic stuff that we talk about, he could feel it. But because he's a digital kid, he went and looked up the olfactories. He looked up the sinus cavity
Mm,
and he went, that's what I feel. So he was able to match his internal experience with what the books show, which is essentially, you asked earlier, like what I've done, how have I changed things? That's primarily what I did was I felt stuff and then I went, okay, what do they say this is in the medical textbooks? So it started with that, which has led me to this new approach of autonomic intelligence. And I'd mentioned to you earlier about the dural sinus cavity and where we were going with that. And I wanted to just share before we check out here. Um, and by the way, I really want to thank you for
sure. My
that
pleasure.
testimony, and I hope that people listening to this pay attention I sure did, as I've always. Every time, I mean, there were certain things that you said because you were, kind of a dumb young kid, like all kids.
Yeah,
And you would
yeah,
say
I was.
dumb things every now and then. I'd just go, okay, Billy, all right. But then every now and then, wham, you would come in. And I remember being stunned and that's when I knew you were made of, the Chinese expression is made of the right wood.
Hmm.
So, and I didn't have that expression then. I got it later on from them. But anyway, you asked earlier about this business of the dural sinus, and I want to share this. Can you see that? Can you see this? Are you
Uh,
there?
yeah, yeah, I'm here. I can't see it though.
Uh, hmm. Let me see. Let me get this down. I'll go to share. Didn't share it. All right, now can you see it?
Yes, yes, I can. Yep.
Okay. Cannot see. Okay, all right. Let's see. Move this out of the way. So now this at one point, I'm trying to get your image up here.
Yeah, I can see
Uh,
you at the top.
you can see me, but I want you to be up here. That's me.
Yeah, I can see me on my
There you
side.
are. There you are. So it's whoever's talking. So I'll talk, and then when you talk, it'll come back. So remember, um, I talked about the dural sinus. That's the top of the head, the crown chakra, and when you go with the Hindu um, symbology and iconography, and in Chinese medicine, they call it Bai Hui, the 100 meeting places, top
Yeah.
of the head.
Mhm.
Very, very important acupuncture place, acupressure, all kinds of stuff. And as you know, when you practice and you feel your aura, your chi around the top of your head, it has a profound effect on the inside of your head. So, because I studied the physiology of the brain. We'd worked on the veterans with traumatic brain injury, and we'd cured them. So I had the data, I had the theory, and then I went to investors to try to come up with a gizmo, a device, because that was the only way that they would invest would be if there was a scalable gizmo.
Gotcha.
The difficulty is that the gizmo is only useful for people who are willing to put skin in the game and work their butt off and develop interoceptive knowledge like you did. And
Right.
you know how hard that was. And for the
Right. Sure.
typical person to take the time to do that, it's just not going to happen. But at any rate, that was the defect in the business plan was that it's a selective, by definition, a selective program. They're just only going to be relative handful of people who are going to make it. And I
Right.
found that out in my school. People got to be made of the right wood. Now, we can create a system where they can educate and probably expand that, but it's going to take time, and there have to be leaders that demonstrate this and convince people. And they have to be, I talked about this in the last podcast, an entire educational program that will create articulate instructors who are capable, who can actually create real energetic pulsatility that affect others and walk the talk, which
Hmm.
is walking the talk is the hard part. So anyway, I got together with one of my doctor investors and we created this concept where you have a halo that fits on, it goes around your head, kind of like a hairband, half a hairband, and then you have a part on top that touches the dural sinus. And it's an EEG, which from that, you can measure blood flow from it.
Okay.
And then the pressure sensors are important because the heart signal that we'd already proven was key to manifesting the pulse. And there's also a blood pressure and a heart rate variability marker that we found. So if you can demonstrate that you're causing fluctuations in the pressure of the top of your head, you are showing with this device that you're controlling flow through the dural sinuses, which are where those meningeal vessels are that prevent age-related brain disease and that probably were the mechanism by which those people overcame their traumatic brain brain injury. So you can see what it does is it's got a it had to be wired, and so it sends out it's recording all these signals in your brain, and your brain, by the way, is highly pulsatile. And
Mm,
most people don't know this, but the brain, we talked about Bagua earlier, the brain literally rings itself over a 24-hour period. It actually twists and rings itself and cleanses itself, move and writhes inside your skull. And you
mm.
can feel that when you run the pulse up in your head. You can feel things kind of move around in your head,
Sure.
especially if there's an infection there. If there's a problem, it really, you can feel it
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
trying to get rid of it.
Mhm.
So anyway, it picks up these signals and then it wirelessly sends this data and to a machine, and then that machine then can this is the machine here, and then you can send it to a cell phone or to a laptop monitor, and it can tell you whether or not you have significantly changed the flow in your head. Well, this ended up bombing. It didn't really work. But
Mm.
just to prove, really, what this is, just to go back, to the original start, I want to see if this may not work. And you can see what we have up here is a situation where you've got a device that's essentially picking up the fact that you're going boop, 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 boop. And that brings us back to, if I can get to it here, old Billy.
That's right.
There he is, the man who kicked it off. And remember, folks, don't worry about a nuclear war because while you're sleeping at night, there are, I don't know how many, 100 of these nuclear subs floating around under the ocean, watching out for your welfare, watching out for a nuclear attack, going boop, 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 boop. So, with that, further ado, we'll check out. And Billy, you want to say goodbye?
Yep. Thank you so much for having me on. Hopefully, I'd appreciate it if you bring me back on at some point in the future. I enjoy talking with you.
Absolutely, brother. And we want to thank you, and we'll see you next time on Cue the Music.